Yeah. All right. So, man arrested in kidnapping case of Arizona girl was out on bond in kidnapping of 2 other girls. So this is a kind of fucked up story. It's actually kind of pretty fucked up. And it seems like it was avoidable. So scrolling down, and I got to make sure you guys see it. Great, you can read it. Hey, Plethora. Hey, Pleth. I haven't seen you in a while. Hey, how are you? Hope you're doing well. How are you? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I hope you have a fantastic night. Right. So it says, a South Carolina man arrested Wednesday and accused of kidnapping a 12-year-old Arizona girl was out on bond in an ankle monitor in connection with the kidnapping of 2 other underage girls, authorities said. Timothy Scholthius? I've read this before, but I didn't pronounce anything. Okay. 23, was wanted by authorities in Graham County, Arizona on suspicion of kidnapping a 12-year-old girl. He was arrested at his apartment in Bluffton, South Carolina, where the child was found unharmed. The Beaufort County Sheriff's Office said in a statement Wednesday. Scholthius was being held at the county detention center Thursday pending extradition to Arizona, the sheriff's office said. The FBI contacted the sheriff's office Tuesday and said Scholthius was suspected of being at his home with the missing girl. The child, the sheriff's office said, was medically evaluated and has been reunited with her family. The Graham County Sheriff's Office in Arizona identified the girl as Betty Taylor. Betty went for a walk near the her Safford home on March 20th. After she didn't return hours later, her family contacted authorities and a search began. Officials in Arizona said the investigation continues. Scholthius has been accused of kidnapping children before, the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office said. The Sheriff's Office was contacted by authorities in Aiken County, South Carolina, on September 18, 2020, about sisters aged 10 and 12 who were believed to have been abducted from their home. Scholthius was identified as a suspect, officials said. Police said the 12-year-old girl at the apartment found the 12-year-old girl at the apartment and then had on Hilton Head Island. Police said investigators learned Scholthius had dropped off the younger sister at a church near her home. I wanted to come say hello. Hey, thanks, Plethora. Thanks for being here. All right, apparently I can't read today. Whatever. I can't read shit. Anyway, yeah, so the just the story is this guy gets out on bond for kidnapping 2 girls, right? So he kidnaps 2 sisters, 12 and 10. He I guess gets bored of the 10-year-old, drops her off. Good, all right? Drops her off at a church. The 12-year-old, he possibly sexually assaults. And then he gets arrested, right? So he gets arrested. He gets sent to county jail or something, and then he gets put on a $5,000 bond for the kidnapping, abducting 2 individuals, right? Remember, the first 12-year-old was found at his apartment. So he gets a $5,000 bond, he puts it up, he walks. And then later on, another 12-year-old girl, right? A second 12-year-old girl is kidnapped. This is Betty Taylor, a child here, is kidnapped. And he has her for like 9 days, I think it was. And then is finally arrested again. So I guess my question is, like, are we being too soft? Like, why was a person like this allowed to walk? Why should a person like this be on the streets? Is this a failing of our justice system where a guy like this like gets to put up bail, right? He puts up bail and the police don't keep track of him or anything. someone accused of a very, very serious violent crime, and with the bail being set so low. So I guess I'll tell you what I'm in favor of, and something I've thought about previously, is like getting rid of the bail system altogether. So our bail system generally, right, works like if you are accused of something particularly dangerous, you'll generally get a high bail, and then you have to put that out, right? Put it forth to get out. If you're accused of something that's not considered particularly serious, you get a low bail, and then you have to put that forth, and then you get out. But if someone is dangerous, if the state suspects that a person is dangerous, then why should they have an out in the first place, right? If the state actually thinks this person is a threat, then there shouldn't be a bail. Shouldn't be a bail at all, right? The person should just be locked up. If the state honestly doesn't believe that this person is going to reoffend or is a danger to the public, then let him go. Let him go, right? You get accused of, I don't know, stealing bikes, right? Like, then, and the public that has no reason to be particularly afraid of you, then all right, then let them go. Then they can plead their case from outside, work with their lawyers. But if they are a person accused of going on a shooting spree, obviously, well, why give them a bail at all, right? We can give them like $1 million bail, $2 million bail. But for some people, you can actually make that, right? For the most dangerous people, for like a person accused of like rampant sexual assault, right? Some of them are actually wealthy. The only people you're keeping in jail are those who can't afford it. Why tie it to wealth at all, right? Either you are dangerous and you shouldn't be out walking the streets, and or you aren't, right? Not particularly, and you should be able to put up your defense from outside, because being able to put up a defense from outside makes a big difference. It makes a very big difference if you can do that from the comfort of your home. You got a fucking case hanging over your head. You're not in comfort, but from home rather than in jail. That's huge. It's absolutely huge, right? Especially if you're a person without a lot of means and you have to like keep going to work. You can't, like, if you don't show up and then you'll get fired, and then that ends your access to income, and then paying for a lawyer. It's an impossible situation for so many people. They have to be able to do so from the outside. So this person in particular is accused of a dangerous crime, kidnapping children. A child, in the first incident, found in its home. And then, under our current bail system, $5,000. $5,000 is all that they were charged for bail. Put it up. It's pretty easy, right? And as I understand it, for bail, you don't have to put up 10%, right? And your bail bondsman puts up the rest. And then, yeah, so like, I guess $500 is all he had to actually put up. So he gets out and then reoffends very quickly. I think the first incident was actually in 2020. Am I incorrect? Testified. Yeah, the first incident is in 2020. So he's accused of it, and then he's let out on the streets. Why? Fucking why? So are we too soft on criminals? Is what I'm asking. Sheesh, another child scandal in Arizona. Hey Gigi the Great, thanks for being around. Yeah, Gigi. Is there another child scandal that I don't know about? Like, tell me about that. I don't know. A debate board, there's several factors to determine bail, right? Yeah. If you know those factors, please come on in. If you think that this made sense, like, not that the guy reoffended, right? But I'm less concerned about his actions. I mean, please don't go assaulting little girls, please, right? Like, don't do that. But I'm more concerned about the state's actions here, right? There are going to be people who are offended. And I understand they're going to be, even no matter what the system is, there are going to be people who fall through the cracks, right? I'm asking if our system as it stands makes sense. Yeah. So like if you're saying, well, there's different factors that lead into this, well then, yeah, tell me about that. Tell me about tell me about like what you think might have led to this particular situation. Because the charged are innocent until proven guilty. However, we ought not be releasing individuals with a serious criminal charge where alleged crime was committed with a firearm and where the charge has a criminal history. It's not such a black and white proposition, is it? I'm not saying it is black and white. I think a lot has to go with first of all, why don't we just have an open panel? So I'm going to be here. Do we have people? Oh, there are people in the waiting room. Okay. Do I have a fucking mod? That's a big question. Do we have any mods? No, we have no mods. Not being yeah, the people. I don't think you're being argumentative. I'm just like I'm agreeing with you that this is a hard case to figure out. But yeah, I don't think you're being argumentative. Though I like it when you are, of course. All right, let's see if I can find a mod. That'd be interesting. Because most of my mods. Okay. One second, guys. Let's see if I can get ammo. Okay. Let's see. Calling on all mods. 1 second, never mind. Just yeah, the wrong one. All right, here we go. Okay. Okay. Yeah, sorry. While I'm waiting for a mod, give me a minute. But there's a serious issue when bail that conservatives are discussed for a while. There's a blot on our nation's criminal system with regard to the nearly 400K people sitting behind bars who have yet to be proven guilty but cannot afford the bail set by the courts. 400 people sitting behind bars who have yet to be proven guilty but cannot afford the bail set by the courts. Or 400K, excuse me. I mean, no, really. So I haven't heard conservatives talk about this. So I'll take your word for it, debate board. I just haven't heard conservatives actually dig into this topic. I've heard conservatives being more punitive about all this. So like, I find that's actually very, very interesting that you would say that. All right. Yeah, I find it interesting that you would say that. Hold on. Okay, yeah. Need a mod. 1 second. Still trying to figure out if we get a mod here. Oh, hopefully someone will show up soon. Yeah. Because yeah, conservatives have been more punitive on this topic. I've heard them talk about, so there are progressive DAs, right? And they've been pushing like a similar bill, trying to get rid of bail altogether. And what I've heard, the messaging I've heard from conservatives has been, we got to be tougher, much tougher. You're being soft on criminals, right? Where you do this. where you allow people to walk out with no bail. Demolishing the bail system keeps our families safe. I can believe I could believe that within conservative circles, within conservative political spaces, that they'd be talking about this, and then during a campaign maybe they just up their rhetoric. I could see that, but I don't see them like moaning about this, like bemoaning it. I don't see people on the right having. If you have articles about conservatives talking about this, like I'm actually really curious from a perspective on the right as to what should be done, right? This is, I can see this being as an overreach of the state, so that conservatives should be against it, right? The state arresting people using its legal powers against them, right? And people not being able to put up a defense only because they're poor, right? Like, it sounds like a thing to me that conservatives should be against, but I'm actually quite curious. All right, so let's see. It looks like I finally have a mod there. Oh wow, 2 mods showed up. That was actually surprising. Okay. All right, let's see if we can pull in a few people. Hey Brento, thanks for being here. Yeah, it's been a topic for more than a decade now. They were the driving force in New Jersey behind the Chris Christie and their money bail reform. Their money bail reform. Interesting. Clarence Thomas ruled to uphold a federal court ruling against Harris County, Texas, that found that county violating Constitution, telling people in Houston. Let me check this out. This is a National Review article. Let me take a quick look at this. By administration, this crime wave is perfect time to abolish cash bail. From the National Review. Okay, all right. Let's can you guys read this? All right, good. Let me take a quick look at this, and I'll jump in to the waiting room and have a conversation with people. Say the Biden administration is sufficiently worried about rising crime rates to focus upon the issue this week, but they're not quite sufficiently worried about rising crime rates to reconsider the commitment to ending cash bail, as Biden promised on the campaign trail. Cash bail is the modern day debtor's prison. The cash bail system incarcerates people who are presumed innocent, and it disproportionately harms low-income individuals. Biden will lead a national effort to end cash bail and reform our pre-trial system by putting in place instead a system that is fair and does not inject further discrimination or bias into the process. New York City's Police Commissioner Dermot Shia attributed the surge in violent crime in 2020 part of the city ending cash bail. Interesting. Contending it creates a revolving door for violent offenders. NYPD officers have made a staggering number of gun arrests over the past 3 months, Shia said, praising his rank and file. But those caught with guns don't stay in jail for any length of time. 4 days later, excuse me, most people are back on the street committing gun violence. Shea told NY1, blasting New York's new laws that prevent incarceration for misdemeanors and some non-violent felonies. Is it possible that maybe, just maybe, cash bail is more than just the modern-day debtor's prison, and that its primary effect is to incarcerate people who are presumed innocent? Apparently, the Biden administration sees no reason to rethink or re-examine the past position or characterization. Question: given everything that is going on with guns, without guns, does the president still think that this is the best time to end cash bail? I don't think I have a new position for you, but I'm happy to check to see if anything is more to report. Thank you for this. Actually, this is actually really useful. Thank you, Debate Board, for this information. I had really not seen conservatives talk about this, so this is actually quite enlightening. All right, I'm going to jump into oh, you got another one too. All right, I'll check that out later. So I'm going to jump in here. But thank you so much.
But what do you have to add that's different?
Hello, guys. Hello. Hey, how are you? Thank you for being here. Okay, so I hope you guys paid attention to my preamble. Did you guys know what we're talking about?
Bits and pieces. Yes.
Okay, great. There. Okay. And something's wrong with your camera, Guy. Your camera is super blurry. Maybe you're aware of that.
Yeah, I'm on a different computer. It's got a weird thing on it I couldn't turn off.
Okay. All right. Let's put you guys on screen. Okay. Yeah. Thank you all for being here. All right. We read an article at the start of this, and it talked about a person who reoffended, who was out on bail. And after that, they were a dangerous criminal, and then they were out on bail, and then they ended up reoffending. So I was talking about whether we should reform our cash bail. I put the article in VC chat, so if anyone wants to take a look at that, it's right there for them. Yeah, what do you all think about the cash bail system? What are your thoughts?
It seems like it's a pretty effective way to make sure that people show up for their trials. I'm not sure. I mean, it seems like it's like a judgment call based on the judge of how much they're going to charge for the bail in order to get people to show up. And I think you said something earlier about how like it seems to, make it so that rich people are able to pay for their bail more than like, somebody who's poor. And like that could be an issue. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if judges take that into account when they set bail or not. But yeah, I don't know. It seems like it's probably okay.
All right, let's take two cases, right? Two cases of a person, two different people committing the same crime. All right, let's say it's murder, right? They're accused of murder, and they both get set a bail of $100,000. One person is blue collar working class, makes less than $15 an hour, right? And the other person is a very wealthy upper middle class individual who can put up 10 grand, like 10% of the bail, and get themselves out, right? Why should one be out and the other not?
Was that at me or just
everyone? I'm talking to you. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I don't necessarily know if like one should be out and one shouldn't, right? I mean, they're kind of, you have two separate situations with two different people who can afford two different things, right? And like money is the way that it buys you opportunity essentially. And people who are rich just have the ability to do it. I don't necessarily know if it's like a good or a bad thing.
Should the money then buy you opportunity when it comes to our justice system? Should the rich have a different process because they're rich?
Probably not, but I don't know if like eliminating bail does that, right? You might have to tweak it depending on like how rich people or like what your net worth is or how much assets you have.
Why? So then, what would be the point of tweaking it in that case, right? So like you're saying, are you saying make it so that the person who is more wealthy has a higher bail?
I mean, maybe. I mean, again, it would have to depend on the judge and what they see, fit. But essentially, like what bail is supposed to do, right, is just to make sure that you show up for a trial, right? It's not about. It's not supposed to be about punishment, and it's not supposed to be about like keeping people in jail or not, right?
But if you don't show up for a trial, you'll like get like more charges, right? Like, you'll be a fugitive. So why do you need money to make sure someone shows up for a trial? If there's already a punishment for not showing up for your trial, right? Like the judge is not gonna be like, oh well, I don't have any, I can't charge them a fine, right? So I guess that's it. No, they'll send officers after you, and there'll be an additional charge, right?
So if you don't have a bail system, right, and you have somebody who is like accused of a crime that they didn't commit, well, now they have to sit in jail, and they're not able to pay for bail. They're not allowed to go out until their trial, right? So if you're somebody who's innocent and you have like a bail that you have to pay, right? If you can't afford that, then that's really bad too, and like maybe bail should be adjusted for that because whatever. And it's also going to be depending on the severity of the crime as well, right? But I don't think that like eliminating bail, I don't know if that's what you're necessarily proposing. I feel like you're probably just asking questions. But like, I don't know if eliminating bail is going to be like a solution to that, where we have people who are innocent who are sitting in jail awaiting trial.
Yeah, so here's the problem. Like, I think you are trying to work out your feelings on this, which is fine. But it's like, I think you were bouncing between two different opposing priorities. into like what you think the bail system should do, right? Either one, it should protect us, right, and keep people to making sure people show up, right, making sure people show up, and then two, it should keep a person inside, right, who deserves to be inside. But I'm saying that our current system doesn't actually do any of those things, right? It doesn't like fulfill those priorities properly, right? So the cash bail system, if there is an individual who is dangerous, right? Who is dangerous, who the state thinks is dangerous, then they shouldn't get bail. They should stay inside, and then they should have to put on their defense from inside a county jail, which really fucking sucks. On the other hand, on the other hand, if they aren't dangerous, like if they've just been accused of some sort of petty crime or whatever, right? Then they should be let go. It shouldn't matter how much money they have, right? For a system as it stands, there's a certain level of income in which it actually doesn't really matter how much the bail is. They'll be able to get out, right? And if the point is, right, the judge wants to keep them in, right? If the state really wants to keep this person inside of jail rather than outside of jail, then to do that, you'd have to raise the price, right? But if that's the case, if you're raising the price, if that's the goal, then why even give them the option? Because this person actually might be able to put that up. So it's not actually filling out, it's not actually accomplishing either of those priorities, right? It's not keeping us safe from a dangerous criminal, because if that dangerous criminal has enough money, they're out, right? And it's, in terms of keeping people, making sure they show up, well, we already have a system that does that, which is adding additional charge, sending the police after them, and then putting them in jail again any which way. Does that make sense, one hand?
Yeah, I guess I'll kind of, because like I get what you're saying, and again, you said that you know, it seems like I'm kind of like just still trying to like figure out exactly how I feel, and like that's fair. I don't have like a super strong opinion. I'm kind of malleable. Like if a better argument is out there, like I'll listen to it, right? But my understanding of how you know, bail works is they set your bail based on how much of a flight risk you are, right? And how much of a flight risk you are is also going to depend on how serious the crime is. If you're somebody who's, you know, on trial for like a triple homicide, right? Like you're probably going to be a pretty big flight risk, because if you end up going to trial, like you might get, you know, you might be in jail forever or get the death penalty, right? So I mean, like, yeah, I'm kind of for bail reform and certain aspects of things, but I don't know if like getting rid of bail in general is like necessarily like a good idea.
Let's go to Dr. K and then Gunter and God.
Sure. So some information to lay out. So one, for those unaware, the U.S. is one of only 2 countries that uses cash bail as a system. The other is the U.S.'s former colony, the Philippines. So cash bail is a very rare system to see utilized on a global stage. Most countries, when they evaluate their criminals, they're using it on a risk-based metric. Because, as you've already stated, if it is indeed done, they evaluate how much you are a flight risk and then set your bail based on that. Why even add the cash part to it, right? Eliminate that altogether and just simply decide whether someone is a flight risk necessary to keep or not, right? That is what, again, every country aside from the US and Philippines already does. 2, it's a huge strain on our financials, right? So it costs about $70-ish a day to keep someone incarcerated. You multiply that over the US's obscenely large prison population, right? Even just accounting for those who are being held currently on bail, that is an enormous drain on our financial resources that we don't need to have, right? So it would save us money to eliminate this. It would be better for the criminals, right? Even just a day or 2 days in prison can do long-lasting psychological damage to a client. And if they, you know, are wrongly convicted and sue, that adds more money charges to the court system, because now they're going to be claiming false imprisonment and psychological damage. So by almost any metric you see it. And of course, obviously, there is the class component to this, where it makes it so you can do a triple homicide, but because you are wealthy, you do not have to spend a day in jail. That is, I don't see how anyone cannot see that as a horrifically classist and imbalanced system that needs to be removed from any society that claims to be class blind.
Okay, Goon, and then I guess Guy. I'm guessing you're putting your hand up first. Yeah.
So, I definitely have a few questions. So, like as far as like how Dr. K just said, somebody doing a triple murder, and then them still being allowed to make bail. Isn't there certain crimes that you know, that don't allow bail, you know, to where like you don't get bail? Like I thought that most
Yes,
violent
it can
crimes
sometimes be up to
you
the
don't
discretion of the judge.
necessarily get bail, you know. Most bail are for people with like non-violent crimes so they don't go back out and commit more crimes, right? So like
There are plenty of violent crimes, though, where a judge can put you on bail, such as manslaughter.
I mean, like I've heard of cases like from here and there, but you know, just to get like my point across or whatnot, like you know, bail is definitely you know, can help a few people out. You know, like I was saying, if they didn't commit a non-violent crime, you know, and like they got arrested and they have to go to work the next day, you know, you're like allowing somebody like to keep their job and their livelihood or whatnot, you know. But and like as far as you know, like somebody who is like affluent or whatever. Because like the price, you know, because bail, first off, it's a liability to the business that is putting you on bail. Somebody's liable for you. You know, it's like promising the
You're liable
courts
anyways,
that,
though.
well, yeah, you're liable. You're liable. You know, like in your case, but you know, bails, they're like a company, so of course they have to stay afloat.
Exactly,
And
and
they're going to charge
one
money for
thing
their
prison
services.
systems need is, of course, a profit incentive to be added to it, which
Well,
has
I mean,
no downsides.
I mean, like, yeah, like I'm not going to agree that like it's like a positive thing, but you know, like
The
even like
Rorschach
how
knockoff is mad at me.
even like how you're saying, you know, that we lose $70 a day keeping people in jail, when that's not necessarily true because we use very cheap labor in jail, and you know, like we do make certain materials, so jails do
Using
make profit from
slavery,
that.
that obviously balances it out.
I mean, and we
even
use immigrants. That's why we
Sir, we
let like a
can't
bunch of
put
immigrants come
people
over
who
here
are
too,
on bail,
because we
one,
use cheap
often
labor.
are not used for manufacturing. Two, even if we can counteract it via slavery, which I don't think we should do, we are still losing money by keeping people in prisons.
Prisons make a lot of money. I'm not really sure how you're saying
we
that
shouldn't be
money.
generating a profit through prisons.
But they
that
do.
That is slavery. Yeah, we
I
don't
mean,
want them to be doing
but like,
yes.
But like I wasn't really trying to necessarily argue about that right now. Like I was just saying, like as far as the bail system,
using
like
it as
it
a
is
crutch
a
for your
system.
point, though.
Yeah, but like I'm just saying that there's really, I don't really see anything wrong with the bail system that we have right now, because it's just like any other business, you know, like we're you know, like they're charging people for their service.
I just explained to you, it puts people in prison who don't need to be there, and it costs us a ridiculous amount of money. Were you listening?
How does bail put people in prison? That's what the court systems do. Bail keeps people out of jail, you know, and they're liable.
We don't need to be putting a price tag on them being in jail in the first place, though.
So the way that bail works in the United States as of right now is people are convicted or are charged with a crime. They're taken before a judge for arraignment. They verify that these are the charges. They determine whether or not the person's a flight risk. They set a bail amount. At that point, the person can pay money out of their pocket to be released from jail immediately. If they don't have the money, they can go to a bail bondsman. They can put 10% down and then the bail bondsman will put up the other 90%, then they can go free. If they show up to
Even
all of
if you
their
don't
court
have
dates,
money,
if they show up to all of their court dates, whether they actually are guilty or innocent, they get their money back at the end. The bail bondsman gets their money back at the end. If they don't, the bail bondsman comes after them and arrests them and drags them back to court in order to get their money back for guaranteeing that that individual came out there to get their thing.
But
So,
again, if someone is
there-
no
what's wrong with
risk,
that?
there
they
are
don't
ways.
need to have
Now
a
that I've
price
explained
put
how
on their
bail
head
works,
anyways.
now that I've explained how bail works, we do have a system right now where people that have more money can afford better attorneys and are better able to argue to get the lower bail amounts and to be able to get bail amounts, period, and be able to get out.
Yes.
People that don't have money, unfortunately, don't get the better options for bail and are more likely to be stuck inside. So, granted,
that makes complete
we should
sense.
create a cashless option so that more people can potentially get out, because there is a crime and punishment method here. But the assertion that, like, the bail money just goes away and we're making poor people poorer, we're only taking their money if they don't show up to court. Like, even if they're
Sometimes when
guilty
you're
of their
poor,
crime,
you don't show up because of the poverty.
even if they're
affecting
guilty
that.
of their crime, they get their money back. So yeah,
What if you
you
do
don't
not
have the
have
money,
a car and
go
you
to
do
the
not have a
jail.
way to get to the court, or you
Wait, but
have
when-
to work?
Well, if
Or
you
you
go
I
to
fucking
mean, you
jail,
should have
they'll
thought
bring you
about
to
that
the court
before you committed the
themselves, and you
crime,
can
or
save
like
the
whatever
money.
you did in the first place. Like, why are you like
no,
thinking
no,
about
so
all
hold
this
on.
beforehand?
So
You know,
when
like,
you
We
you
don't
were
even know
after
that
likely,
they're
the fact.
guilty at this
Like,
if
point.
you were poor, hold on.
oh, okay, like I got in
Dude,
trouble.
you don't know that
and
they're
now
guilty
I
at
don't
this
have
point,
a
and you're saying they shouldn't have
car,
committed
like
the
to go to
crime.
work.
That's not a
Like,
point you can stand on.
if you were
well,
poor,
I don't know. Just stay inside for the rest of your life. I don't know what to tell you.
if you
let's
were
go.
poor,
One hand,
I
go
mean,
ahead.
like,
Hold on,
Dr. K, I do want to point out, you shouldn't make fun of my appearance. You, of all people, should know that people shouldn't be judged on their appearance. It's not my fault that my camera's having a problem today.
One hand.
I'm sorry, I don't dress
if
as
you
an
were-
edgelord.
One hand, go ahead.
if you were poor and you paid bail, right? When you have, you would have more of a, you would have more of an incentive to go to your trial than run, right? Because then you would never get that money back, right?
That's right, because jail isn't enough of an incentive.
That's a shame if you don't, bro. Why? Why would you even take that risk, like, to be in jail? Like, jail should be enough of it, of like it.
Again, you don't know that they're guilty if they're on bail at this point. They
So,
haven't been tried.
So I just looking it up, it says about 75% of people held in jails are legally innocent and awaiting trial, and they're too poor to make bail.
So in other words, basically, the fact that they can't pay bail is the reason why they're not free right now.
Sure, and I think that like I think like reforming bail. I mean, so the problem is if you get rid of bail, right? You have two options, right? You let people roam on the streets while they're awaiting their trial, or you keep them in jail while they're awaiting their trial.
Or you keep the violent offenders who possibly pose the most risk of flight or harm to the community into jail, and you keep the non-violent. You just let them.
Well, that's what he just said.
Yeah, that would be what I just said. So like, yeah, that's fair, and I guess you could probably make good arguments for both, right? If somebody is innocent, you don't want them in a jail cell, regardless of what they're being charged with, and if somebody's guilty, you probably don't want them walking around the streets, especially if it is something that's going to be more violent. I think like a better solution would probably be setting bail based on how much money you have. It seems like relatively like fair.
Based on how much money? No,
yeah,
on how they're
no, it should be based on the crime that you commit, and that's what we have now. Like,
it's not what we have now.
I'm sorry. When I say based on, real quick, just to clarify, when I say based on how much money you have, like how much money you have is being like entered into the equation, not just strictly based on how much money you have. Sorry.
It shouldn't be entered into the equation. Period.
You don't think so? So you think if somebody is, if you think somebody doesn't have a lot of money, you think that you should give them just the same amount of bail, then as
they shouldn't have to pay bail.
Okay, so you just think that you think that if you're getting charged with like a crime, regardless of what it, or like, do you care what kind of crime it is, or do you think that like?
Obviously, yes.
Okay, so if somebody is, let's say somebody has like a like an assault charge, you think that they should stay in?
Depends on the circumstances and if you're deemed a risk.
Okay.
If you're someone who has a history of beating people's heads in, then yeah, probably you should be held. If you have absolutely no criminal record, no, you probably shouldn't be held.
Okay.
But adding any financial like equations or financial barriers into this, it essentially just reproduces classism for prisoners.
Did I understand that right? So, hold on. Did I understand that right, Dr. K? You said that people that are accused of violent crimes, but they don't have a history of violent crimes, no matter what, should be given an option for bail. The only people that we should be denying bail are people that have a history of like doing violent crimes.
I think
bashing people's heads in. We have one case that we're accusing them of, but you're implying we should let them go just on the willy-nilly just because they said that they'd come back, and they might not have even bashed that guy's head in. It's not, we don't really know what's happened yet.
It should, in fact, be based on risk factors, not on your cash.
I don't disagree that it should be based on risk factors, but you implied that if someone doesn't have any history of any violent crimes, that there should be no reason why bail is denied to them or that they should be kept in the jail itself. And
obviously, it depends on the circumstances.
But again, that's my point, is that if someone is like accused of committing an assault, that's a violent crime. And just because they don't have a history of violent assault, we need to consider them a potential risk immediately based on the accusations alone.
Exactly.
Again, it depends on the circumstance. If there's absolutely no evidence aside from someone's word saying that they...
Wait, hold on.
You have to wait like the court hearing, and that's the whole point of bail.
I'm sorry,
to wait,
does a judge weigh the evidence when you're being sent? Does a judge weigh the evidence when you're going to court, or when they're setting a bail? Do they weigh the evidence? Did they even look at the evidence?
No.
So then how can you... Exactly. Yeah. So how can you weigh circumstances if you're not looking at evidence?
Well, you should certainly add that to the system, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that's how we do it now.
Well, you don't think that would like...
We do bail at the beginning of the trial so that we can determine whether or not this person needs to be held in jail during the trial. We have a verdict and we know whether they've done it or not at the end of the trial. So we can't know whether they've done it or not and then hold them in the jail while we're trying them because you're circular logic.
Yes, of course. But I'm saying if
any of y'all been on bail? Just like a personal question.
I'm not going to talk about my personal history. Thank you very much.
Well, like,
agreed.
Have you dealt with bail before? Like, have you actually dealt with this situation before?
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to ask.
I've dealt with legal systems before, yes.
I worked for a bounty hunter for a little while. I'm not going to say that I ran around and chased criminals, but I was involved in the industry.
You worked for a bounty hunter?
Yeah, I just did paperwork and whatnot. It's nothing special. They're called deepwater bail bonds. I don't live there and work there anymore, and I don't.
No. Okay, when someone asks you that, of course, you were a bounty hunter. Of course, you were kicking down doors. No, this is the time to lean into that. You are a badass, right? Like, there's no reason they can't prove that you're not a badass. So, sorry,
I'll let you kind folks make whatever assumptions you want to make from where you are.
Okay,
I'm over here.
Sure.
Pencil pusher for brutalizers. Good on you.
Well, so can I ask Dr. K a question real quick? So when you think that the evidence of the case should be brought forward to the judge during pre-trial bail setting, do you not think that that's going to extend the amount of extend the time between trials and make it like really, really long because now they have to take all this evidence into account?
And like, what if the person
not to mention,
trying to get back to work? Like,
fair enough.
Literally going to be sitting in jail for
let
like
us
a
then
month,
just do it by the crime. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
this
so
is the crime.
All right. Sure. Well, so like in your system, if it's by crime, if you have somebody
but again,
where they
you
would
have to do some pretty extensive legal studies on determining whether this was worth it, the time involved, and such.
Sure. Well, so like if you're gonna do it by crime, right, and you're gonna decide whether or not this person is going to be in jail or not, regardless of how innocent or guilty they are, you can have somebody who's innocent who has to spend a long time in jail, like potentially months, for like a pretty relatively minor assault charge. But
yes, our carceral system is fucked. Yes.
Well, this isn't our carceral system. This is the system that you're proposing.
What? That someone innocent spend months in jail?
No, that regardless of circumstance, depending on regardless of circumstance, you cannot make bail. You say you want to keep these people in jail, and not have a bail set for them if they commit a certain violent crime. And if you want to put assault or murder on there, right? Like whatever, like insert whatever, right? Like,
So
you're saying that
are you Dr. K, like to help one hand along? Are you saying that the violent crime, the nature of the crime, should be one aspect, right, of many, or are you saying then that should be it, right? So like if it's murder, then you're in, like, period. No question, right? You were accused of murder, and so you are in for murder. Or are you saying that, like, okay, you were accused of murder, one factor, right? Have you been accused of something or convicted of something in the past?
You're accused of murder, so you should be kept in a cushy facility until your trial date, yes.
Okay, so just flat. All right, that's different from what I'm proposing, just want to be clear, but okay, that's fine. That's fine.
A judge should make a quick risk assessment and be like.
Then what's the risk assessment? That's what I'm asking, though. That's what I think that's what Ham's trying to get to as well. Like, what is this?
I personally feel like a murder charge is a pretty hefty risk, and so like even a possible murder charge is a pretty hefty risk. But again, it depends on the circumstances, right?
So then, basically,
these circumstances aren't being weighed, right? Like that's not what the judge is doing. The judge isn't looking at circumstances. What if you have somebody who's ran over somebody else with their car, right? And they have two charges, right? They have vehicular manslaughter, which is like technically like an accident, or they have murder because murder is another charge being brought up in the case. Just because like it's possible that this person's only going to get convicted of vehicular manslaughter because it was an accident, but murder was a charge brought up.
And it shouldn't be, the judges doing this assessment, frankly. I think that they have more important stuff to be doing, and that you have like a legal department for a reason, right?
What? Well, now I'm confused. You're saying the judge has more important things to do than judging, and so instead of having a judge do the judging, we have a legal department do this particular thing, right? Just
like a clerical department.
Why we have? I mean, I feel like this, like it's going to go to trial any which way.
Which I'm not against either.
I'm sorry, what?
The other option is, of course, get more judges, which I'm not against either.
Okay, yeah, maybe let's do that rather than creating a completely different position just to do this.
So is anybody here like does anybody here know like a lot like any of like the bail reform like that has been like in like any of the other states?
In California, yeah.
In California? Okay. I'm not super like up to date with California, but like just doing like quick Googling and like looking at like some of the stuff that's been pretty effective. Like one of the options that Kentucky is doing is that they do pretrial risk assessment like pretty much every other like courthouse does. And like the super low risk defendants, they'll get released without even seeing a judge. And they get like constant reminders on like their phones and stuff like that. This would be probably something like if you were doing like low level drug dealing or even drug possession, depending on your state. Like I think that this is like I mean, how do we feel about that? Do we feel like that's a good thing? Do we think it's a bad thing?
Exactly.
Like,
why do you think that's a good thing? Please tell me why. Because California is doing this right now, and people are literally like stealing. They'll go to jail, they'll release them, and they'll go back to doing it, bro. This is like.
There's no notable uptick in crime in California.
Is there evidence that people out on bail like recommit while they're on bail?
The bigger concern is fleeing than recommitting crimes.
Well, do you have a citation for that?
Wait, is it?
That's the
really
entire purpose of bail bondsmen.
Is it?
That's like why we set bail in the first place. It's not that they're going to go commit another crime spree. It's that they're not going to show up to court.
If you have somebody who commits a crime, the reason for putting them in jail is because you think that they're a risk to society. If we knew for a fact that these people weren't going to commit any more crimes in the future, then like do we like really care? The problem is that we don't know this, right?
Back in the cowboy times, they'd lock the person up in the jail until the judge came to town so that they could have the trial for the individual. You have to keep the person confined so that they don't escape judgment. They have to get to the judge, and sometimes the judge isn't available immediately when the police bring him to the jail. You got to lock him in the cell until Monday when the judge shows up. Then they can arraign him, then they can give you bail, and then you can choose whether.
I
don't disagree. I don't disagree with anything. I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. I just don't think that you addressed what I said, but that's okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you re-ask the question? I thought that I had.
No. So like we were talking about like I said that we don't know do we have any data on the amount of people who reoffend when they are out on bail, or like reoffend when they're out on bail. And I think you said that if they reoffended, like that's not what we care about. We don't care if they reoffend. We care if they come to trial, right?
Yeah, I thought that it was an irrelevant point and that it was kind of a non sequitur.
My point or your point?
Well, your point about how many people are recommitting while we're out, because we're not worried about whether they're going to reoffend. We're worried about whether or not they're going to actually show back up. So what I want to see is potentially numbers on how many people don't show up for their court dates, and I think that's where most warrants come from in the United States, but I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
So,
I think I lost myself in the weeds there.
Sorry about that. I do.
No,
that
you're
sometimes.
fine. No, you're good.
Again, like my point is, like a lot of people, when they get like an infraction or something, they get a ticket, there's a promise, hey, you're going to show up at court at this date. And because it's such a minor offense, like they don't even take you to the jail. You don't even have to go see the judge. You don't have to get bail because it's such a non-issue. You're just speeding. But if you don't show up for that court date, now you've got a warrant. Now the cops are going to pull you over the next time they see you run a red light. You're going on the ground, you're going in the back of the car, and they're going to drag you to the jail, and they're going to keep you there until the judge is ready to talk to you. Then once he talks to you, you can get bail. And again, if you don't show up for your court date again after that, now you're going to have a bail bondsman and the police after you. And if you cross state lines, we're going to get federal officers involved. We're going to drag you back to the judge, and you're going to be there. They're going to put you in the jail until the judge is ready to talk to you. Once we find out you're innocent, you can go do whatever you want. You can have your bail money back. If you're guilty, you can have your bail money back. But if you're guilty, you're going in the jail, or you're paying your fine, or you're doing whatever it is to pay your debt back to society.
Sure.
Why is the U.S. the only system that uses cash bail?
Because it's the best system in the world.
If it was the best, wouldn't others be adopting it, though?
What do you mean by cash bail?
I keep wondering when they're going to start adopting all the other great things that the United States is doing, and they haven't started doing it. So I don't want to get into that right now. We're talking about the subject at hand today.
Yeah, which is cash bail. And my question is, why don't others use it?
Because they're not as smart as us? Do you have
Every
a theory?
nation on Earth isn't as smart as the U.S.?
I mean, if we look at GDP, but again, we're trying to stay on subject. You're asking me questions that don't have
GDP per capita, the
answer.
U.S. ain't near the top, actually. But
back to the subject at hand, what are we asking about bail?
Why don't others use it?
Because they're not as smart as the United States. We'll do this again.
That's a non-answer, though.
So I'm actually, I want to know, like, Guy, because you might be memeing or not, like, are you saying that cash bail really is the best system? I want to be clear.
I think that it's the best possible system for the United States. That's why we've adopted the system that we have. And if there was a better option, we would have democratically put it into place by now. And right now we're trying to figure out what a better system might be. And I'm not opposed to a cashless bail system, but like,
hold on, I gotta stop you right there. Do you think that thinking works across the board? That if our current system in the United States is up and running, right? If we the status quo basically is there because it must be the best, and if there was a better option, we would have already taken it. Is that how you?
No. We would be in the process of starting to make these changes. We're not going to see a dramatic change tomorrow that some new idea is going to come out of the blue. We're going to talk about cashless bail systems, and they're going to get implemented slowly and incrementally over time. We're already seeing this happen now. We don't need to suddenly get rid of the entire bail system. We need to understand how the system we have works and figure out exactly what things we need to change. And we are doing this slowly and incrementally already today.
If I can interject, I think that the cash bail system is predatory, especially on minority groups where you have to scramble to get money together to bail someone out of jail. That's actually, to me, that seems predatory. Mm-hmm. Like, you're literally taking next to nothing in order to borrowing from friends, even taking money that you saved, for something important just to bail people out. That's actually pretty predatory to me.
So for a cashless bail system, how would that work? For a cashless bail system, how would that work?
Violent offenders get
who
kept
are you
in
addressing?
jail, or
the situation that we're talking about right now, as far as talking about cash bails and whatnot, what What
So in
Molo just
Canada,
said.
the Crown has to consider primary, secondary, and tertiary grounds for detention.
I'm currently a fan of how we're experimenting here in California with, at least for low-income people, the risk assessment system.
So, like, you're talking about like just letting people just walk free.
Well, no, he's talking about assessing. He's just talking about assessing the risks of individual criminals and then determining what the bail should be, or if there even should be a bail. And I'm extremely in favor of that system, or any system that has thought put into it. The only reason I ever said anything was because we need to understand what we have
bail,
first.
so that means like a price wouldn't be set, right?
So yeah, in a lot of situations, again, like with a speeding ticket, there is no cash bail set for this type of like a criminal charge, because it's such a minor thing, and nobody is gonna like flee the state or flee the country because of a freaking $200 speeding ticket.
So am I muted?
No.
No, I think people are just talking over you.
Yeah, people are just interrupting me. Okay, so the question was, how would a cashless bail system work? And here in Canada, the Crown prosecutor has.
Again, though, I'm still so curious.
Wait, really? Are we gonna continue to talk
let him finish. Let him finish. What?
Oh, did someone not finish?
Oh my God. Caleb Dave was just talking. Did you guys not hear him? Like he was.
No, I didn't.
Oh, I think everybody else heard.
Okay, maybe check your
hey,
volume
Dr.
settings.
K, can you hear me?
Yeah, please, no need to yell, please.
I have Dave muted, that's why.
Okay.
Hi, Dave.
Okay, Dave, please. Go ahead.
Damn it, Dr. K.
You have the floor. Come on. Hurry up. Okay, Dave, you have the floor.
Yes. The Crown here in Canada, the Crown prosecution has three grounds to consider. They have to demonstrate that. They have to demonstrate whether detention is necessary to ensure the accused attendance at court. They have to show that detention is necessary for the protection or safety of the public, and then they have to show that detention is necessary to maintain confidence in the administration of justice, which is usually reserved for very serious offenses. So, like, instead of just like saying, "Hey, you either do or do not pay money in order to get out of jail," here in Canada, like the Crown prosecutor actually has to show that, hey, you know, based on these three grounds, either we have shown that the accused is somehow a risk, and if we haven't shown the accused is a risk, then you don't stick them in jail for X amount of time before the trial date.
Seems good.
And 1 second, Desperado Sensei, thank you for the 5 hot tier 1 gift subs to the channel. Helps us out a ton. Thank you. Guys, if you're enjoying the content, help us out like our kind friend Desperado. Gifting 5 subs, keeping this channel up and running. Gifts, subs, sub yourself, or gift bits, or gift subs, get our emotes and all that good stuff. But thank you, shout out to you, Desperado Sensei, for being awfully kind on gifting 5 hot tier 1 gift subs to the channel. Thanks so much. Go ahead.
That's it. That was how it works in Canada. A really rough explanation, but
that sounds like my neighboring beavers are doing something quite clever, I think, with that.
Yeah.
Hey, do you think that if we like secede, we can just adopt their legal system? Because there's going to be a lot of changes we need to implement into America. I don't even know if we could just do it all with one law to say, hey, we're going to become part of Canada. But I like Canada, and Canada does do neat things. And we need to look at the systems that they're using and see how we can implement them into our systems without destroying the system we already have in place. Because granted, the system that we have now doesn't work perfectly, but it's the best thing that we've got in this country, and we need to take what we have and improve it.
If it was the best thing that we had in this country, then why does it vary so much state to state?
Well, again, that's part of the greatness of America. Different states can try different things and find out what works the best.
That's like the blanket answer for everything. The reason why we do this is because we're the best and we're America. I love it. Patriotic, man. I feel it.
States often disagree with each other, and like the federal government, for whatever reason in your country, is not allowed to have like the glue to keep it all together.
States have a certain level of autonomy and sovereignty in this country, and we really appreciate that. We fought a war about it at one point. Thank goodness the Union survived in that particular situation, because a fallen apart Union would have collapsed in World War II, World War I. But we do have a Union.
Nationalistic rambling aside, right?
We have the ability for each of these states to make their own decisions. That's why California
one person at a time.
So go ahead, hon. I want to hear from Dan. Go ahead.
Hi, Dan.
Yeah, much of the cause of why much of this happened, specifically as we're talking about the issue with as we talked about the Arizona man who kidnapped a girl after being off a bond for kidnapping 2 other girls, is dealt with the system that has been settled, or at least established in Arizona and that's usually what it is. I think what many of Kay has been arguing is for more of a federal system, more of a law system, which I doubt that would happen in any way possible. But if you ask for more harsher laws, then you directly cause bigger issues. As Goon has brought up, that simply when you end up having things like bail bonds and whatnot, then things like payday loans, it will end up popping up and will cause even more hardship to many minority communities, specifically, who have the most hardship with that in areas. And simply, I find much of that very terrible and part of this systematic system as we have now. And all I ideally want is to get much rid of the problem and have at least recommendation to that specific judge to get reprimanded or at least get suspended for that possible mistake that they made.
This is a question to everyone here. What would be the best way to fix a predatory system like cash bail, or at least not be a lot predatory on communities of color and stuff like that? How do we stop,
that's what we were talking about before, cashless bail. Cashless bail, in which you get rid of that, and there's simply 2 settings, right? Either you're in jail or you're not. And that determination is based on risk factors. At least that's what I'm saying. That certain risk factors are being determined. Dr. K is saying something a bit different, but that would be the way. And that, never mind. Actually, because I think you're asking something slightly different. You specifically asked about people of color and how it would not be predatory towards them. I don't know how to do that necessarily, because the judge can still be a racist judge, right? So if that's the case, then you're fucked one way or other, unless even then, you could say that a person with 2 different people with the same risk factors, who commit the same crime or accused of committing the same crime, is and go before the same judge, and if one is black and one is white, then the judge is more likely to let the white person go. So that's I don't know how to do that to protect African Americans and other people of color. I actually don't know. Go ahead.
Yeah, you would ideally have a system that rather than having it by having a judge making a judgment call or something like that, you would do it strictly based on crime, right? What the crime is. So just kind of looking at a lot of the stuff for a lot of the bond reform stuff, it seems like a lot of states, or not a lot of states, but there's certain municipalities that are just doing no cash bonds for super low misdemeanors and stuff like that. So regardless of what color your skin is or whatever, if you get brought in for a non-violent misdemeanor, there's a good chance that you're probably just gonna have a no cash bail, depending on where you are, right?
There's a foundational issue with this though. Because again, this is why we have judges in the first place. Because if we could just say, well, if someone commits a murder, we're going to go by what the book says, and the person that commits a murder gets this punishment. but we need to have a judge in place to make these determinations, because sometimes, like, it's not as easy as by the book. Law is always in a gray area.
It depends, because we have a system now currently where we vote in the judges. So like much of these judges were actually even given
but we can't just go by a book and not have a judge determine what crimes do what. So like we can all say that speeding isn't something that you should need to get bail for, but we can't say that, oh, well, with an assault, we just treat it like every other assault, because every assault is different.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but that's why I specifically brought up nonviolent misdemeanors, right?
And judges use precedent as it is anyways.
I feel like these are nonviolent misdemeanors or crimes that we don't necessarily care as much about because they're not as big of a concern to society. And the crimes that we're really worried about, even in this conversation, are all the violent crimes, all the high-risk crimes, the high risk of.
But if you're going to talk about bail reform, you have to talk about how bail affects every single crime and that's committed. You can't just it has to be a part of the conversation. So I mean,
again, I'm not opposed to saying we should make more crimes just based on a bailless system or like a go-free sort of a system, but it's not going to work for all systems, because there are sexual assaults, there are literal assaults, there's domestic violence charges. And all of these situations are going to require a judge to make some sort of a judgment call at the very beginning to determine if this person is a risk to either commit the crime again, like you guys were suggesting at the beginning, but the more serious worry that they're going to flee and not show up.
I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying.
Whenever you get arrested, whenever you get arrested for like a crime or whatever, and you initially go to jail, if you're able to post bond or not, depending on which crime you committed. And then later on, you go to see a judge. So I'm confused on why y'all keep on saying, it's like after the fact that y'all are speaking of, like after they've seen the judge or whatnot. But like beforehand, before you even go see the judge, you already have a choice to make bail. So like, why are we referring to the bail as being like predatory or whatnot? Like the bail system is just its own business in itself. Like how do they have like any judgment or whatnot, like on what like the judge,
So the judge sets what the bail is going to be.
Like that,
The judge does the arraignment where they do the official charges, and at that point they set the bail amount. They don't start the actual trial for a couple of days until after that's done. So that's where the bail period comes in. So there is an initial judgment on, hey, this is what you're being charged with. We're going to either let you out without any money, or you need to pay this much money, or you're not allowed to leave at all. You're going straight back into jail. But then over the next couple of weeks, you're going to have a trial. Yeah, it's from a judge. Yeah. A judge makes that determination, not the police officers. Thank goodness for that. Could you imagine the legal system?
Well, no. Like I thought it was just like something that was like just already written,
legal system,
and that you were referred to.
Hey, someone that knows what they're talking. I mean,
okay. So, Prime threw the bait out there with the worm, and I bit it. I said, fuck it, let's go. We're gonna do this, I guess. Okay. Yeah, I was sitting there, I was like in bed, I was like, fuck, alright, I really don't want to talk about the legal system. But then, Prime threw out the hot take, and I said, fuck it, I'll bite. So, Prime, I want to make sure I ask this and start it off with the, clearest question I can possibly ask. Do you believe that pure outcomes, no nuance, just strictly looking at a judge having sentenced more black people to prison than white people, that alone, that statistic alone proves that a judge is racist? I want to make sure we're clear, so I'm not like
the 1350 thing.
What? No. It's not. He's not doing 1350. No. There would be more than that, right?
Okay.
Like for instance, if he was if this person is in a district with more African Americans, then you would expect there would be more African Americans who would commit crimes. So you'd have to be looking at you had to be do a comparison of people who have similar charges and the outcomes there, right? Like similar charges, similar circumstances, and then compare that over time.
Okay. So then we're on the same page then, because I was gonna say, I was like, when you sat there, I imagined you were saying purely based off of this amount of people that were black were sentenced to prison, this amount of people that were. I was like, wait a minute, this is super hot take.
No.
But that's more reasonable. And I was gonna say too, because I would agree more in the line of saying that you would want to look at similar as possible circumstances. Unfortunately, it's going to vary from person to person. It's going to be very difficult to find those one-for-one comparisons, just because you'd have to look at prior criminal history, you'd have to look at all the other factors that go into sentencing, and also the facts of the case. It's going to be very difficult to find a one-for-one. But I would agree you'd have to get as close as possible as you can to make that determination. Even then, I don't know if I would necessarily draw that conclusion alone that the judge is racist because of that. I would say that you have to maybe dig even further, and finding the intention of a judge being racist is very, very difficult in my opinion. But yeah, so no, that's fine. And then I noticed y'all were talking about bail reform and the criminal justice system, so I have to comment on that, not to steal too much time here. But bail reform is very tricky. There is constant news stories right now where people have been let out on bail. That's their constitutional right, but they've been let out on bail and then they reoffend. Is it low? Statistically, I guess. I think in Houston, one of the statistics I saw in 2020, granted it was COVID, it was like 18,000 people that were let out reoffended while they're out on bail, but there was also 80,000 arrests for felony and misdemeanor arrests. So it's like 1 in 8. Still pretty high in my opinion. Almost 2 in 8.
That's super high. 1 in 8. That's a lot more than I thought it was going to be actually.
Yeah. And it's a rising problem. They said it's been increasing over the years. So it's not just a COVID thing, though. What they did with COVID is they not only did they lower the bail system because they didn't want a lot more people in jail. They also were more lenient on certain crimes that were maybe like, say, possible ticketable offenses, which is what caused a lot of controversy amongst conservatives about people who were like supposedly stealing from a store or something, right? Or like, I don't know about robbery, depending on the circumstances of robbery. But someone proposed that we should look at the crime and determine the bail based on that. We do that currently. That is currently one of the things, and that's one of the reasons why you can be denied bond. In fact, if you're charged with capital murder, you can be denied bond because of that. And we see this as well, right? If you're charged with murder, typically they're going to, and depending on the case, they're going to set your bond at like $100,000 to $500,000. Like it's absurd the amount they do that for. But usually lower crimes like misdemeanors and stuff, it's very, very relatively low. And there's also various kinds of bonds as well.
So are you in favor of a cashless bonds reform like I was discussing?
Cashless? Say that again. Like, I'm sorry.
So eliminating cash altogether, right? So we're not doing bail.
Well, that's the other thing too, is that they do have some bonds right now that don't really rely on cash. That's the personal recognizance bond, and then there's also the property bond, but it's only offered in certain states.
Can you tell us about the personal recognizance bond?
Yeah, it's basically just saying, hey, I'm going to show up to court. It's basically the summation of it.
Except for that, the ones that have a certain level of crime, right? Like there's some sort of risk factor that's been adjudicated by a judge. And then those people will still have to go to jail?
I don't think the personal recognizance. So here's the thing: everybody's technically going to go, depending on the crime. More than likely, though, if you're getting any kind of bond, it's because you were arrested and put in a jail facility, right? More than likely. So technically, yes, you're going to have to go through the processing system, but you're still going to end up having to face the judge. If you're charged with like a ticket, like a ticketable offense, you're not really going to have a bond because the bond is to get you out of jail.
Okay, hold on.
You know what I mean?
Hold on. I think maybe we're talking past each other. So let me try this again. When you say personal recognizance, are you saying that within a cash focused system, as we have seemingly, I think, in all of the United States, that there are circumstances where you're released on your own personal recognizance? Is that what you're just saying?
Yeah, like within our cash bail system that we have currently, there are more than just.
Then that's not what I'm talking about. Then I'm talking about. So what we're talking about here is getting rid of cash altogether. Take cash completely out of the equation, on all circumstances, right? And the judgment is based purely on risk factors, right? So it could be, so the level of crime could be one risk factor, right? That you're charged with.
Yeah.
Your past offenses, right? Whether you're a flight risk because you have the means to do so, or you have ties to the community, all that kind of stuff.
Already.
Yes, it is. However, once that's considered, that's put into the cash bail system. And so, like, they'll figure out, oh, okay, well, I don't think you're much of a flight risk, so I'm going to set it at $5,000. But if you're poor and you can't afford, right, to pay 10% of $5,000, to pay $500 to get yourself out, well, then you're stuck there one way or the other, right? If the system doesn't think that you are actually a danger, and that's why they're setting it so low in the first place, why even put that into place? And on the other hand, if you're rich, then you will always be able to get out whenever there's a cash bond set, right? If you're actually that concerned about how dangerous they are, if it's to the point where you're setting a high bail, right, to say, hey, maybe you should stay in jail, well, then why don't you just tell them to stay in jail and skip that altogether and make it so the rich don't have a certain advantage in that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So one of the things I would say to that is that I would have to look at a couple of things here. One, an unreasonable bond, I believe, is unconstitutional. I'd have to look at that a little bit further, but I believe an unreasonable bond is unconstitutional.
You can set it to like $1 million though. Like, if you've seen that.
Well, again, we'd have to, like you said, and as we have agreed, it depends on the crime, right? So would somebody who was charged with, let's say,
what do you think is reasonable though? I'm sorry, but let me stop you there. What do you think is reasonable though? Like, what is your criteria for reasonable?
Yeah. That's what I'm about to explain. Okay. So if someone was charged with, like, say, assault, and it was like what the lowest felony is, right? I'm trying to use like the lowest felony as an example here. I don't know what kind of assault. I think it's probably like felony assault or something along the lines, or larceny, grand larceny. Grand larceny is like $1,000, but it's a felony in Texas. Okay, it doesn't really necessarily harm anybody per se. It's just you stole something that's over like $1,000. Okay, I don't believe it's reasonable for you to be in jail and have $1 million cash bail. I think almost anybody, any reasonable person would say that a grand larceny charge does not deserve $1 million bond. Would I say that it should be $10,000?
Let me give an example. Instead of just being some random person, let's just say it's Ezra Miller who's playing the Flash, who has dealing with certain similar circumstances right now, where he basically stole around $1,000 from a family in like Hawaii, and is not currently dealing with charges at the moment. What do you think that he should get like $1 million?
Well, I would say that it depends on his income, right? Like, so if obviously you know that he's a famous actor. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, like, based on his income and based on, like, his situation, I would say that a larger bail would probably be more reasonable for somebody like that. I don't think it'd be really.
But what's the purpose of that? What's the purpose of that, though? Like, what are you trying? What do you think should be the point of the bail system? So if you're saying that, like, because he makes a lot of money, presumably, who fucking knows, honestly, but like, if he makes a lot of money, then he should have a higher bail. Then it sounds like the purpose of the system is just to make money for the state.
No, that's fair. That's fair. So I would say the meat in the middle would be to, and this is why I had to look further into this, is to see what is the average. Reasonable could be determined in a lot of ways. I would say that one of the easiest ways is to look at what is the average, given the. First off, you have to look at, like we kind of talked about earlier with the racist judge situation. You'd have to look at what is the average given that particular crime with the bond. So if you see that the average for, let's say, grand larceny was, say, a $5,000 bond or personal recognizance or whatever it may be. Maybe it's a bond. It's a $500. Well, no, it wouldn't be $500 personal recognizance. It'd be a $500 bond. Anyways, $500 bond is an average, and you come in there, no criminal history, you are middle class or let's say lower income even, and you get handed a $10,000 or $20,000 bond. That seems extremely unreasonable, and I would be willing to bet that there has to be some kind of lawyer out there.
I don't think you're understanding. You're understanding what I'm saying. I'm saying, what is the purpose? Is the purpose to keep this person in jail, right? If you scale it to their income, right, then the purpose, and you say, like, well, a rich person should get a higher bail. But if they're still able to pay it, then that means they're out, right? And they can't pay it, then it means they're in. If you scale for a person of lower means, right, you're giving them a bail, right, and they have to meet this threshold to pay it to get out, right? Is the purpose seems in that system just to raise money at that point? because all you're saying is not like to keep a person in who you think might be dangerous. It's can you meet this level of financial threshold? Now you can call it something reasonable or not, right? By like averaging, right? But like that actually has nothing to do with my personal circumstances. So hold on, it could be the case that like for the crime that I am accused of, that the average bail is and in a person in my similar situation, the average is $5,000, right? It makes no difference if that's the case in terms of what I can afford to pay. I might be able to afford to pay that bail, and so I'd have to stay in. Another person under similar circumstances in my area, right, could be accused, could have even committed the crime with me, right? And they getting this exact same bail amount, right, might be able to afford it, and they're out. Why are they out and am I in? It seems like that the purpose of that system is just to raise money, because it's not actually keeping me it's not even determining whether I'm actually dangerous or not. It's determining if I have a level of wealth to meet this threshold, and then I can have my defense outside. Go ahead.
Okay, real quick. I'm so sorry. I know that other people want to get in here, and I'm so sorry, one-handed, but I have to answer this real fast. So, let me ask you something. I'll tell you the exact reason of why bond is used. One of the things is one, bond. Let me ask you, Prime, if you were to invest $20,000 into a vehicle, right? You would keep that vehicle in good condition, correct? Most of the time, we want to keep it. Just work with me. Just work. No, just work with me.
I'll work with you. I'll work with you. Go ahead. Yes, I would. Yes, it'd be very important to me.
And if you had a $10 item, let's say it's a pencil. Or not even a $10 pencil, Jesus. A $5 pencil. You'd probably not give two shits if you like lost it. Okay, $2 pencil.
So really fucking expensive. Okay, no, I get you. All right, sure, yeah.
Okay, so what the idea is that having a $20,000 bond based on the crime, you are basically throwing it into an investment, saying, hey, I am going to return to court. And the reason why you would want to return to court, and it's important, is because if you post a cash bail, that can get returned to you as long as you make all of your court appearances, unless, however, you get found guilty and then they charge a fine, in which case you basically kind of lose that bail in essence.
So what happens now, so ignoring the fine, so we got there's a fine system, but let's ignore that now. Other than that, what's the other thing that happens when I am not showing up to my court dates?
Then you lose that bond because you didn't show up.
No. We're pushing that aside. What's the other thing that happens when I don't show up?
You get a warrant.
You get arrested again.
Yeah. So there it is. That's the reason, right? Yes. The money is an incentive for me to come back, right? But I already actually have one. I don't want a warrant, right? I don't want an additional charge added to me, right? Because I'm like, I decided to fuck off. They're going to charge me with something else, right? With being a fugitive. If I don't show up, correct? So then that would be the reason as to why I would show up.
It doesn't seem like a warrant is enough.
Who would be like issuing these bails though?
But I'm confused because this seems like it backs up my point.
Well, so real quick, so I think that if we are gonna start if we are gonna start changing bail based on like how much money you have, right? I think it seems more fair to start focusing on people on the lower end of income and be like, hey, listen, like, although normally a bail would be set for like $10,000 for this crime, right? Like, we know that you don't have the money to pay for this, right? And that like, if you're somebody who it's like, we just know, like, we've looked at this or this or this, and we can tell that like you're making a case that you don't have enough money to pay for it, right? Maybe then bail can be lowered a little bit so that you can be out, right? I think it's better to focus on that rather than be like, well, you make so much fucking money that this is pocket change to you, so fuck you, we're gonna raise the bail, right? Like, I feel like if we are gonna focus on making it more income based, right, then we should probably focus on the lower end, which is kind of is going back to the question that was asked earlier, that like, how do you make it so that this system isn't negatively and disproportionately harming people at the lower end of the economic spectrum?
Are you asking me that question? I want to make sure.
It wasn't really a question. It was kind of just
okay.
To like go along with what you were kind of saying, right?
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say, because when you mentioned that earlier, Prime, about the incentive, I think that's kind of what I'm saying, right? Is that the purpose of the bonds right now is an incentive to show up, because you're going to get that money back, or if you don't show up, you're going to be back in the same position you were before you even had the bond.
I understand, but like, I'm saying, why do we need an extra incentive? We already have the one incentive, right? And that for people who aren't if you are a person who is going to run, then you're going to run, right? If you're that person, then you are gonna fuck off. If you're a person who is not just run, maybe you don't run, but you just don't pay attention to your court dates and you fuck about, right? You're gonna do that any which way, right? And then you're gonna be punished any which way. And both systems will be punished, right? It's just that in the system I'm proposing, right? It doesn't matter how much you earn. Like, that has nothing to do with it. People who are rich don't get more comfort and security from being able to launch a defense outside of jail just because they're rich, right? Everyone, presumably, if the judge is fair-minded, everyone will get an equal chance to have the chance to do their to defend themselves from the outside based on their risk factors. Like, why put money in it at all? We already have reasons for them to show up.
So, like, I guess my confusion is where...
Sorry. Like, what'd you say, Doc Hoss? And then I'm going to go to Goon after that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair, because I don't want to take up, like, the entire panel. What do you... Like, what I'm trying to understand is, like, if you committed a crime, you're arrested, do you believe that majority of people should be handed a person more cognizant? I'm kind of confused on, like...
I'm not saying even the majority. I'm saying that, like, based on their circumstances, their risk factors, right?
But we already have that. I guess that's why... I mean, I guess that's where we're going in circles.
But yes, but it also involves the cash. Because it's not just on the risk factors, it's on their ability to pay. So, and some people can't pay. For the same crime, two people for the same crime can have the same bail, and one gets out and one doesn't because of their ability to pay, because of their economic circumstances, period. Why are we introducing that when we can have a system the same? We can have a system that's almost identical as to what we have now, but, like, it has nothing to do with how much you are able to pay.
So, like, when somebody, you know, whenever you go to, like, your bail's person and, like, you pay that money to get put on bail, they're liable for you, correct?
Correct.
So yeah. That's the money part. That's where the money part comes in, right? Or wrong? Or, like...
Well, doesn't it start in the courthouse?
I guess that's where I'm kind of confused.
Yeah,
like,
that's... Okay, so there is money that gets involved there. And I understand where Prime is coming from, that we shouldn't be penalizing people that have less money and making them go to jail as a result. But from what I understand, the only reason that the court ever, like, assesses how much money an individual person makes is when we've already determined, hey, this person has to pay bail, but then we look at how much money they have and they go, the amount that we're going to charge them is so negligible that it's not going to actually deter them from running, so we're going to increase it. I do think that we need to get rid of bail in most all situations, but you're never going to tell me that a murderer doesn't need to have any sort of a cash incentive. Well, granted, a murderer never gets out anyway.
Yeah.
But there are going to be situations where there should be and can be a financial deterrent that allows people to get out of jail and guarantees that.
Let's go, Hunt.
That one person can pay, you know, like $5,000 to get a bail, and that, you know, and that's because that's the price that, like, he has to pay, and then, like, the other person can't afford it or whatever. But, like, the person who paid for it is getting that service because the bail company is liable for that person now, right? So that's what you're paying for, right, or wrong?
So the court is establishing how much you have to pay. You have to pay a percentage to the bail company. The bail company is putting up the rest. If you don't show up to court, the bail company has to pay all of the money, the 90% to the court, and they lose it.
That's like, so, like, that's where I'm just completely lost at by what you're saying, Prime. It's like, you know, why would one person have to pay, and like, if like the other person couldn't afford it, you know, then that would be wrong. Well, not like you just can't afford that service.
So I think
so I'm saying
that's the
wrong
part about that. Like,
so I think,
hold on. I'm gonna go to debate board, then one hand. Yeah.
So I came on to address a point that Doghouse had brought up earlier. You know, we've seen states like Kentucky, New Jersey, Harris County, Texas have abandoned cash bail models, and specifically related to the deterrence effect that cash bail is supposedly guaranteeing. that folks won't, flee the jurisdiction or otherwise. When studies of New Jersey and DC in particular have demonstrated that defendants' rates of appearance for trial after cash bail was abandoned are similar or better to rates of appearance in court before the rescission of cash bail. So what we're finding is you eliminate cash bail, right? You're getting a greater rate or an equal rate of attending court than you were beforehand. So that is an argument against retaining cash bail starts to fail when you look at actual reforms that have happened in the last 20 to 25 years.
Could you please be so kind as to link a source for that? Debate
I'll put it in your chat because I don't know how to do it in VC chat.
Oh, you don't know what do you mean on doing it in VC chat? Just put the link.
Boomer, man.
Just put the link in VC. It's right there. Click it and put the link in there. It's fine. I'll get it one or the other. But go ahead. One hand's your turn.
Yeah, so I haven't looked at that, so I don't know how, like, I don't know what necessarily they're talking about. I don't know how true or valid or whatever, because I haven't seen it, right? I'm not saying that you're like making shit up or whatever, right? So I guess my point was, it seems like Prime, what you're saying is that, like, if you already have the incentive of not getting thrown in jail anyway, right, by like a bounty hunter or whatever, basically going and finding you and whatever, because you don't go to your court, then it doesn't seem like you should have the the incentive, not the incentive, sorry, you shouldn't have like the cash bail system in place because you don't need the incentive. You already have an incentive, right? Am I wrong about that or no?
I'm sorry. I was like trying to look at his article. I apologize. Could you TLDR?
Yeah. So like if you have there's already an incentive to show up because you're going to get thrown back in jail by a bounty hunter anyway, so that we don't need a cash system depending on the crime, right?
That, and they'll probably add a charge onto it. I think like you were going to make the situation worse by not showing up. So that's already your incentive, yes.
Sure. Do you think that? Wow, I'm 14 again. So like we already make things like illegal, but people still do them anyway, right? There's already an incentive to go to jail if you do something illegal. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to deter more people, right? Like if something, I'm just trying to think of like if dealing drugs is illegal. And I know that it's illegal, and I know I'm going to go to jail for it, I still might deal drugs, right? If I know that I'm going to, flee court, right, because I don't want to go to court, and knowing the fact that I'm going to have a warrant out for my arrest might not do it. But if I'm somebody who doesn't have a lot of money, and I know that fleeing court, I'm not going to get any of that money back, and I'm not going to be able to go on the run or whatever, it might incentivize me to go back. And I think that's why we have the cash bail.
No, it wouldn't. No. Okay. So like this is interesting because I feel like I'm about to say some like conservative talking points, right? Like criminals are criminals, right? And they're going to break the law, right? This is the argument against like gun reform, right? Like law-abiding citizens will follow, even they literally just broken the law, right? They are more likely to follow the law. And if a person is going to commit a crime, they're going to do so regardless if you put a law in place. Right? So like you're saying, oh, well, this person is the type of person who flagrantly breaks the law, like cares nothing for the consequences in terms of being incarcerated, right? But money that we want to fine them, oh, that's the thing that's going to do it. No, like if this person is definitely going to do it one way or the other, then they're going to do it.
It wouldn't be somebody who's going to do it one way or the other, right? Because that would mean regardless of how much cash there is.
So you're asking for edge cases, like on edge cases, like I'm thinking about doing it, but now we got this money, so I'm not sure.
I can easily hit on this. So this is a great point. So I'm going to walk through this. This is actually really easily. So you said that if this is somebody who has obviously been incarcerated multiple times, I think is one of the examples you used, as well as they're going to basically violate the crime. These are factors that we would already consider, correct?
I don't think that's what he was saying exactly, but I'll go along with you. Okay. Yes, that's yeah. Sure.
Okay. So then would you then be in favor of somebody that is like that being denied bond altogether if they're already a flight risk?
Yes. And that's what we already have. I get that, but I'm saying eliminate the bail altogether, the cash bail.
So are you wanting like a yes or no, like, okay, either I'm going to release you or I'm not going to release you, and make it as simple as that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yes or no.
That seems a little bit of a gray area though, right? Because now you have people who are going to be like having something that's so black and white like that, that's like yes or no, and basically what it sounds like is you just want personal recognizance bonds or not any bonds at all. And that seems kind of concerning to me, because if you have somebody that's, let's say, a 2-time offender, but let's say they have somebody who's a 2-time offender, and they had ended up, but that first offense was like several years ago, right? I don't think the middle ground is the cash bail, in my opinion. You have the personal recognizance, cash bail, and then you have the no bail. Now, first of all, no bail can only be usually used in murder cases and stuff anyways, so it's like the extreme end of it. But if we were to go to the no bail and the bail, I would say that there are the gray areas where the cash bail does come in play. For example, like I said, somebody who committed a crime several decades ago, they should probably be at least saying, hey, look, you at least did this. I think a cash bail is appropriate for this, just because you have committed a crime prior. And so
Why?
at least there's...
What's the purpose? What does that do that that simply charging them with an aggravating offense, I'm thinking using the right term, aggravating offense would not? So if you charge them for not showing up, or I'll let them know that, of course, you'll be charged for not showing up, right? Some sort of aggravating offense. What additional purpose does that make, right?
It's an additional incentive.
Why do we need the additional incentive? I'm saying, I'm with the debate board, and I'm saying that we don't need additional incentive. I want to look over his article, but like it sounds like for a system, at least in one state where they've instituted this, they're getting the exact same results, right? I got to look at the article, I haven't seen it. But if that's the case, then that means then there is no additional incentive. And what you're doing is saying that if you happen to be too poor, at least, or are too poor at the time, then you have to stay in jail. That's all that's saying, right?
But you're paying to get out of jail. So you don't have to sit in jail and wait for court.
But if you can't afford it, I know, Goon, I get that. But some people cannot afford that.
Okay, so they can't afford that service.
Yes, but like, why? Hold on, but it's not a service. Hold on, no. The judicial system is not a service. Absolutely not, right? It's a constitutional mandated obligation, right? That it's a constitutional mandated obligation for service, but not service. Operation that the government must perform, right? This is not like a service that you buy, right? I buy my freedom. That's what you're saying. That's not what it is.
That's not
but that's what our current system
is to get out of jail and wait on a court.
Freedom.
Besides sitting in jail and waiting on court.
Freedom. You're buying. Hold on, sorry, dude. Hold on. Sorry.
What's the problem with that?
Are you following this conversation? Like, yes, I've literally said multiple times what my problem is with this. My problem is that you are buying your freedom. You're saying it gets you out of jail. What is jail? But restricting your freedom. So then you're putting a price tag on the freedom. And some people will be able to afford that price and some people won't. And why are we putting that additional layer of that additional barrier that only works to make people suffer who happen to be poor?
I think we disagree fundamentally on the actual reason for bail. I think that's what we're kind of arguing about right now, because I think my personal reason I believe for bail is for the fact of an incentive, as well as also keeping those that are dangerous off the streets, right? And so those who are deemed dangerous, at least by the court and the hearing that they have for that bond hearing, based on prior criminal history and so on and so forth. I think that that's the reason why bail is there. It seems that you kind of seem like that's the reason, but it's also kind of like you think that they're going to reoffend anyways, so just have it yes or no.
Well, Dog Show,
Can I ask
real quick here.
So debate board, go ahead.
The effect of bail, right, to hopefully, right, deter a person from fleeing that jurisdiction, right? There is already a set of other interests and factors and drivers that judges can impose, right, to continue to detain somebody or incarcerate them without imposing a cash bail factor, right?
Yeah.
So what's actually happening here is this is a post hoc rationalization for cash bail. It's just adding another layer of incentive that, per the American Progress article that I noted, and 2 studies in there of both New Jersey and DC, right, is indicating that, look, you remove cash bail and you still get an appearance rate that is equal to or even better than you had with a cash bail system in process. All right. So there are other there are other approaches to keep someone who is charged with the crime incarcerated without imposing bail, and they're more effective. They're actually more accurate in their assessment to the impact to public safety, which is a real compelling state interest in keeping somebody incarcerated, as opposed to somebody's ability to pay. And to Goon, your point earlier, keep in mind, dude, that when you're charged with a crime, our ethos is that you are innocent until proven guilty. And what you're advocating here for is that you have to protect your innocence by paying. And that fundamentally is unfair. And if you can't pay, then you are still incarcerated for a crime that you still have not been proven guilty of. Right? Now, I don't think anybody here is arguing that judges should not be able to assess the risk to public safety by allowing a charged individual back to the streets. Okay, that's not actually being argued here. What's being argued is, hey, why do you have to pay to protect your innocence? And that hardship falls unduly on poor people.
Well, the problem I have with this, and this is why like maybe we're just gonna be fundamentally disagree, is that like I believe that cash bail is for that gray area for those people, because you have those who have never committed a crime, right? I'm using the prior crime thing. You have someone who's never committed a crime. They're probably very likely just to get a personal recognizance bond, basically just a making sure they're going to actually appear, because they don't have any prior criminal history. They're more likely just going to appear for like court. It's no big deal. Then you have those that are the gray areas, like I mentioned with the person who had like a DUI like 10 years ago. They have committed a crime. We're not sure, maybe they willfully, maybe they won't. I don't know, depends on the case, right? Or maybe, and this is the other thing too, is we're like trying to assess this on so many other different cases. It's easier to look at the bonds on a case by case basis. But anyways, the cash bond is for that kind of gray area, and then the no bail I think is perfectly acceptable for where it's at right now, which is if you committed a capital murder offense, and I think most of us in this room would probably agree that if you committed a capital murder offense or a first degree murder, you probably should be held with no bond, or at least an extreme bond of like $100,000 to $500,000 if anything, right? So at that point, yeah,
I'd have to look it up. So because I don't know, and then I'm going to go next person I'm going to go to is Guy. He's got his hands up. But I'd have to look it up. But I'm almost certain that people who are able to put up a defense, right, work with their lawyers from outside of jail rather than inside of jail, are less likely to be convicted. I don't have the stats on me, but I'm almost certain of this. Almost certain, right? And I think this is kind of intuitive, right? One, if you are a person of little means and need to go to work to be paying for that lawyer in the first place, right? Well, then not being able to go to work and losing your job is going to put a serious hamper on your ability to put up a defense. And just being able to interact with your lawyer, right, without like the limitations of like that the jail puts on you. Like all that are additional barriers to putting up an effective defense, right? So we're saying that people who are rich, right, or more well off, people who are more well off, right, they deserve a better justice system, an easier justice system, a more luxurious justice system, because they can afford to do so, right? They because you have more money, you will be more likely be able to avoid jail time, avoid being convicted, because you can put up that better defense. So why are we introducing that at all? Why not? I guess I've said it multiple times already, but that's what you're essentially doing. You're saying that people of means, right? Well, you have a better chance of putting up defense rather than people who don't, right? And like the purpose of having what is it? The system, the free lawyer system. I'm sorry. What am I thinking of? The name of everyone's entitled to a lawyer. The public defender, yes. Public defender system. The purpose of having a public defender system is because in this country we pay lip service to the idea that no matter who you are, you should be able to get an effective defense. Obviously, that's not how it actually works here, but the cash bail is an additional barrier to that stated goal. Guy, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all, Prime, and I like totally respect the desire to try to bring a little bit more equity into the justice system because there is ridiculous amounts of inequity in the justice system. We all know that if you have more money, you're going to be able to afford a better attorney, and it doesn't matter what they charge you with, you're going to be able to get off of this. Unfortunately, bail is an additional issue, and if we eliminate the bail issue out of this, just because now you're no longer in a position where you're having to go through the jail, talk through. Do you need a moment?
You're talking to me?
Okay, yeah, no, there was static or something, I thought.
I'm sorry.
So, just because you're not in the jail doesn't mean you're going to have any more likelihood to beat the case than the rich person. The rich person has like a private attorney that they're paying thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars to. The public defender is a public defender. They've got a limited amount of time. They're not going to be able to give you the defense that you're hoping for. So there's inherently financial inequities in the system. I do appreciate that cash bail is a further inequity, but it is kind of an essential inequity. We can reduce the amount that we have. We can make it so that there's more cashless bail solutions, but we can't just throw all of it out completely and go cash bail is just a terrible system that's disadvantaging already disadvantaged peoples. But at the same time, we need to keep systems in place, and we already have a system that unfortunately disadvantages people that don't have as much money. Unless we're going to make private attorneys illegal and make it so that everybody's using a public defender and the city attorneys to make these charges so that everybody has a fair representation as far as lawyers go, like, we're not going to have the system that we should. The Constitution says we should all be able to go to court over $20 and have the right to a jury attorney. But the money just doesn't add up anymore. The system can't do that now. Attorneys cost too much.
Debate board, go ahead. There are so many other tools. Well, not so many other. There are other tools, right, that the courts have available to them to continue to incarcerate somebody who's been charged with a crime without imposing a second layer of barrier or reasoning in the form of a cash bail, right, to hold them, right? So and what we see is that, at least when I'm reading tonight as I quickly scan things, is when you hold people who on cash bail, particularly those who are not well off, there's evidence that they go on to commit crimes at a 40% higher rate after the fact. All right, so you have this harmful effect on less well-off people, and if you're holding them on a cash bail that they can't afford to pay out, in addition to you're taking them away from their jobs, their families, and these are people who are still innocent.
I have to push back on this. So the thing about this though is that this is very black and white with what you're doing, and it's lacking. And I'm pulling the nuance card out on this. First of all, with those people that re-offended, it doesn't seem like the bail alone was the reason. I think that's a little bit tad unfair. We'd have to look again, just like we did with the bail system to begin with. We'd have to look at what was their prior criminal history. We'd have to look at all these other factors to determine, was it may have been a factor, but I don't think it was the factor that determined, oh well, they were held on cash bail, so they ended up committing a crime. No.
Well, let's not get so rigid here when we so casually conflate correlation with causation for the link between poverty and crime. Okay, so if we're going to allow that sort of correlation to hold the floor there, then we ought to be equally willing to hold it here.
Okay. You just spit out a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo, and it seemed like
no,
you were the one
making
making
mumbo jumbo. No, what you're saying is, hey, whoa, wait a second. There may be some association between continuing to incarcerate somebody because they can't afford cash bail, right, and their likelihood of committing an additional crime once their current predicament has been resolved. Right, and you're suggesting, well, hey, yeah, there may be an association there, but we don't know how strong it is. So, but all I'm saying is, like, look, we play the correlation game as basically causation when it comes to explaining poverty as a cause of crime, but we're not going to do that here.
I'm not the one saying that. I think there's a whole bunch of things that go into it besides just poverty equals crime. I think that's super black and white. That needs
fair enough.
I'm
saying, hey, we're on a discussion panel here, and we ought not to try to weasel our way out of this by saying, oh well, we're not quite sure just how strong this correlation is or association is. It is a factor, and it's a factor to consider.
I mean, I say it's a factor only by the way of that's how they're in jail. Or, well, no more than I would say that, like, people who commit crimes are more likely to commit crimes because they went to jail and they were denied bond. Like, it's more of, like, just a factor, an action that kind of, like, that's what I'm saying. I'm not, I would say that there's a deeper issue there when it comes to this. All in all, and again, when it comes to the cash,
and I probably agree with you. Yep.
Yeah, I don't think just to simply say, oh well, I don't think you're either gonna say that, like you just said. To me, when I'm sitting here and I look at the criminal justice system, it's we're talking about all these different things, and I want to mention too. I would encourage, and I'll post it again in chat and voice chat actually, where these are the common bails that are set currently for these particular crimes, and it goes by different crimes, the average, and we can agree, $2,500 seems like a lot. It is. If you do 10%, I think it's like, what is 10% of like 2,500? That's like simple assault, I think.
250.
250, yeah. So, I mean, granted, minimum wage workers probably can't pay that, nor could probably most people, because I think like the average savings is less than there's no savings like less than 800. People can't afford an $800 or some shit. But again, it's case by case basis, and that's why I'm sitting here when I get into the conversation about the legal system. It's like you can't have a conversation about the legal system without having the nuance, because you can't do that whole idea of you can use the for example how African Americans are incarcerated at a disproportional rate to whites, right? We can look at that all day long, right? That's fine. We've recognized that there is obviously a disparity. Then we look into why that case is, right? Then we dive into that. And just like what we talked about with Prime, when we're talking about the different cases and how you'd have to compare one to determine the judge is racist. This is the same situation here. When we talk about the legal system, we have to talk about the nuance. If you don't want to talk about the nuance in any other case, fine. But when it comes to the legal system, we absolutely have to talk about the nuance.
What about this? Like, just subsidize the lawyers so that then allows regular people like who can't afford a normal lawyer to get one.
Well, so I think there's certain cases where like well, actually there's a lot of cases where you have like when you have like well, for example, like if you're charged with like say a speeding ticket, you can pay an extremely high paying lawyer to maybe possibly get you out of it. But the other issue we have to look at this as well is that a majority of cases are resolved by plea deals. They're not really resolved by actually going through court, which is another issue in itself. But when it comes to the attorneys, yes, you're going to get what you pay for generally, but it doesn't mean that because you pay for a ton of money towards an attorney, you're guaranteed to get out of jail free. There's probably a higher probability because they can spend more time, but it doesn't mean that you're out of jail free. We could look at classic popular examples of people who like Derek Chauvin, the other person, I can't remember her name, who ended up shooting the guy in the car. These different police cases, right, where they definitely had like the backing of the police unions and a lot of high-paying lawyers, but at the end of the day, the jury was the one that found them guilty. I can't remember that one chick's name.
It was going to happen with Rittenhouse until it was all over, even though he had all of the richest attorneys in the world.
I think we're pretty much over with Rittenhouse. Much of the issue
to bring him up,
we're
just
dealing
the
with
point
is this
that we
case
don't
from
know.
Arizona.
I don't see how any of this relates to cash bail. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it doesn't relate to much of that either.
Well, yeah, attorneys don't get involved in the cash bail. Attorneys don't get involved in the cash bail system. If we want to be, if I would be willing to make any concession, even though there's like tons of people that come through the jail system to begin with, I would be willing to agree that we should have an attorney there to argue on your behalf at the bail thing. I think there are attorneys that can argue on your behalf.
Do you have any data that implies that a cash bail system makes it easier, or sorry, makes it more likely that people will show up?
I don't have it offhand, to be fair.
Okay. And I'll get to you in a second, debate bar, because I do want to hear what you have to say. Does anyone else have any data? Because like I'm looking through, I'm trying to like parse through everything that debate bar sent. Debate bar sent something that's more focused on just the reduction in jail population, which is still interesting because it shows that most of those people do show up, right? So like in one jurisdiction, 94% of the people are released pre-trial, and then 91% of those people show up, right? So it seems like an incredible high number of these people actually do show up. So I mean that's evidence to show that that it's not needed in the first place, right? That if you have cashless bail, but no, the point is that it's just at this point we're just relying on some sort of intuition, right? And it's like intuition that seems based on the fact that that is the status quo, right? And we're assuming that if we had a different system, that things will necessarily be worse, right? But I haven't seen anyone prove that this system necessarily provides that additional incentive, provides any benefit, right? Other than filling the coffers of that jurisdiction. Right.
If I could, I actually think that it's pretty intuitive that you would actually get the same amount of people coming back on either case, just because the kind of people who wouldn't come to jail, even if there was a cash bond, are the type of people who would do that on either case. So you wouldn't expect to see a difference there, I don't think. But I think that the issue that we're talking about here is kind of even a non sequitur, because the bail part doesn't even really matter. If the crime is so consequential that you don't trust that the person's going to return to jail, then that person probably shouldn't even have a bail to start with. The bail is just an additional mechanism that doesn't even need to exist, because the person who is going to come back, bail or otherwise, would do that no matter if you had a bail.
Well, and I have to push back on Prime. Prime, you said something earlier about just like a minute ago about all the bail does is end up feeding the coffers of the state. But I disagree on this. If you end up having the cash bail, right? Now I get what you're saying. I understand what you're saying earlier, and I'm willing to look into the studies and see what they say, and I'm sure I'll find all sorts of interesting things. I do have my contentions with it. One being with the appearance, was this on their own recognizance, or was this part of, if you included, like, say, reoffending? Because when you reoffend, you're going to appear in front of the court again. So it's technically an appearance, not on your own recognizance, necessarily. I'd have to look into the data. That's just something
he's talking about, like, the data that I'm talking about, or the data that the Debate Board provided, is one where they changed to a cashless bail system.
What I'm saying is, if you do a PR bond, for example, and they count for who appeared back in court, I'd be curious. I guess it comes down to, I'm curious how they define reappearing in court. Is it on their own recognizance, or is it the fact that they were reoffended? How many of those people who appeared on their own behalf, what percentage of that was actually?
It's not reappearal. It's failure. They're looking at failure to appear rates for like trials. At least at the study that I'm looking at, I'm pretty sure they're referencing the same data.
Well, nonetheless, to the coffers point, if you were to post a cash bail, again, if you were to post a cash bail, you would end up getting it back should you make all those court appearances. So it's not necessarily feeding the coffers of the state. And in fact, if it would actually behoove the state to not actually have you in the jail, because you're actually spending, it costs to keep, it costs, I have to look at the average cost, but I know it's quite a large amount to house an inmate in a jail facility.
Oh, I see what you're saying. That the overall they're losing money, like beyond like the cash bail. No, I agree. Okay, I agree. I think you're right on that point. Fair enough. Debate Boy, you wanted to respond?
Yeah, and it was to somebody's point. I think Doghouse's point. I think what he was trying to suggest is, look, these bail amounts are so low that they are not or should not pose such a serious barrier to people affording them. Doghouse, am I summarizing what I thought you were getting to correctly?
It would depend on the crime. Sure. I think there's some that are like, yeah.
I posted into Prime's chat a drugpolicy.org website who referred to a Drug Policy Alliance's report in New Jersey, where they found nearly 3/4 of 15,000 people in state jails there were awaiting trial rather than serving a sentence. Almost 40% of those 15,000 being held were there solely because of their inability to pay bail. More than 10% could not pay bail amounting to $2,500 or less, and more than 800 were being held for the inability to pay $500 or less. So even though, looking at your source, we're seeing relatively low bail amounts, we're seeing significant numbers of people who cannot afford to pay that bail and continue to remain incarcerated despite not having been convicted of anything. And these are low-level crimes. I mean, 20% they say here are just simple drug charges.
Well, wait. Where's the 20%? Hold on, because I gotta. I'm trying to. Okay, 20% of them arrested on. Okay, wait. So this is super. Oh, so super important. So it doesn't say 20% of them were arrested on simple drug possession charges. They're saying drug charges, which is super broad.
Well, the vast majority though are possession charges, not. I'm sorry. Possession charges, not distribution.
I'd have to look at that.
Well,
I don't.
It's non-violent charges. So
okay.
Really
well, that's
a good point.
Well, no. Wait. It does matter. Because typically, if it's let's say it's a we would probably almost all agree that a possession charge is probably lesser than a distribution charge. I would imagine, at least.
Well, distribution just doesn't necessarily mean that you're actively giving out drugs.
Well,
and you might just have it bagged out.
Sure. The other part of this is
but let's not get distracted by that, Doghouse. The point is that despite having the low amounts of cash bail, people still can't afford it.
Okay, wait. So first of all, we have to look at the position of why they were having to bail in first place. And so this is super important to understand the charges. So for example, they're saying 20% of them were arrested on drug charges. Were they arrested with other charges? Again, we'd have to break down these charges because these charges absolutely matter to why they were bailed. We could also look at the fact of were they previously convicted of a prior crime. We have to look at these as well. All of these nuances matter to why. So the fact that I'm going to say this in a way that is going to probably come off a little abrasive, but the fact is that if we have somebody that's committed multiple crimes and they're in jail for a drug charge and their bail is only if we sat there and sat somebody that had like 10 crimes, let's assume they had 10 crimes prior to this drug charge, okay, and they're being held on a $2,500 bond, that's actually really low in my opinion. And I would say that if you can't afford, I would say $2,500.
Why are you adding so many hypotheticals and qualifiers?
Okay, I can absolutely I'm engaging with a study he provided that just simply says 20% of them were arrested on drug charges. No other context.
Can I ask you?
Even so, Doghouse. Even so, the court has the ability to continue to detain somebody using those same factors that you just highlighted: previous criminal history, whether or not this is a recurring criminal or allegation of a crime, or I'm sorry, allegation of a continuance of commission of a comparable crime. That they don't need cash bail to hold them. They can hold them. They can continue to detain them without imposing cash bail.
Olive branch.
On those same factors you just cited.
I'll give you an olive branch moment, okay? I will give you a concession that if, and I have a hard time believing that 20% of them arrested on drug charges is this, but I will concede that if these people are being held on simple drug possession with no prior criminal history, none at all, I would agree that the $2,500 does seem a bit excessive.
There shouldn't be any cash bail in that sense.
At what? Well, when would you want somebody to not be set a bail? At what threshold of criminality would you want somebody to not have a bail? I'm just
great. This is great. So, like, for example, I weigh heavily on the prior criminal history, my personal opinion at least. Also, if they've
that doesn't really mean anything because it could be multiple DUIs.
I'm going to ask the underlying condition. It's like, Dog, do you want people who go to jail because they do meth?
Simply for like doing meth.
Just doing meth, or like cocaine.
Going to jail as in like being arrested.
A moral good.
I'm trying to follow. I'm trying to understand this because are you saying that I need to understand the circumstances. They were caught with possession of meth. Is that what we're working with here?
Yeah, the point is that it seems that there's some like underlying like bias that's making it difficult for us to even make this conversation.
Well, because there's two parts here. You're asking me whether or not someone should go to jail. Well, by way of being arrested for possession of a controlled substance, you're gonna go to jail to begin with. So if you're saying should someone be arrested for having meth versus someone being sentenced to jail for meth versus someone being held on bail for meth, these are three different steps that I have to answer at each point. Unless you're asking from the very beginning, should they be arrested for meth? That's a whole nother question as opposed to should someone go to be convicted.
I think it's more like to fine tune this. Should someone have a bail set for a non-violent offense?
If they have no prior, if they have no prior criminal history, they are, let's say they're a little bit older, they have a good job, they have a relatively stable income or something like that. I mean, all factors considered.
What if they had 3 DUIs? That was their prior offenses.
And what were they arrested with?
DUI.
So they arrested with DUI with 3 previous DUIs.
Yeah.
No, obviously.
No, wait. They should have a pretty. I wouldn't say
you didn't
no
put
bail.
any qualifiers on the prior offense. You just said prior offense. So, like, what's the qualifier for that?
Well, it's situational. That's why I keep saying.
That's why I'm trying to figure out the situation.
Yeah.
So wait a minute. Is your whole message here that we don't have enough nuance to be able to talk about any of this and make any determinations about any of these things?
We're talking very broadly, so I'm trying to give. I have to work with very specific examples because that's how our bond system works currently. Our bond system currently works with that nuance, extreme nuance, which Prime and me seem to have agreed with.
I think the conversation is trying to be, do we need the bond system, correct? So if we can figure out at what threshold bonds need to be instituted, then we could discuss within that realm.
And I've explained this like a million times. Mine is I believe there is. The way it is set up, I think, is perfectly fine, which is the fact that we have the personal recognizance. If anything, I'm willing to pull back a little bit on some charges, maybe. Like, for example, if you were charged with simple possession, no prior criminal history, sure, pull it back and put personal recognizance. I don't know what the stats are for people who have 0 criminal history and simple possession. I don't know all the stats on that because it's very specific. But I would say that the way that we have it is the cash bail is good for the gray areas. Like you were saying with the 3 DUIs, cash bail is perfectly appropriate for that. Perfectly appropriate for that.
Yeah, finally you answered the question that you're perfectly fine
I've been answering this.
Okay, let's go to one hand.
Yeah, so I was pretty like upfront with like how I have like a pretty malleable position, and like I'm kind of just like asking questions and trying to figure out like what the best argument is, right? So I posted something in voice chat, in the text chat. It's a nice study that looks at how bail reform can lead to improved court appearance rates. I'm not sure if this is the same article because I couldn't actually find the article that Debate posted. I'm not sure where you posted it. I don't know if I'm looking in the wrong place, whatever, right? So what this is generally talking about is about how when states look at like, low flight risk and low danger to the community offenses. Basically, when you don't have a money bond for these people who are not at like a high risk of fleeing, or they're not like a high risk of being a danger to the community, when you do this, it seems like they either stay the same, like their failure to appear rates either stay the same, or they increase. And it seems that one of the reasons why this happens, if you scroll a little bit down, the DOJ actually did a report that talks about how people actually don't really they don't intentionally miss court dates, right? So if we're going to be talking about like how this is affecting the most people and how this is like an actual solution that we could put forward to actually better the most people, I think that like something like this, when we're talking about like low criminal offenses, things that are like relatively small misdemeanors, even potential non-violent felonies and stuff like that, it seems like when you implement these strategies that the failure to appear rates roughly stay the same. They stay stable. When we're talking about like super 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 intense or super like serious like rates, I'm not really sure if there is any data on whether or not like giving or reforming the bail for these people actually makes them come to court less or more. Mostly because I don't think that a lot of states are changing the I don't think a lot of the states are changing how like murder bail goes, like or bail for somebody who is like is being tried for murder. So like in terms of like how the data pans out, I don't know if if somebody murders somebody, I don't know if like just keeping them in jail or releasing them on bail, like it doesn't. I don't know what the stats are on that, but it seems like for like smaller offenses that it does actually like either help or stay the same if you don't give them a bail. And I like this study.
Yeah, and I would even say that like I'd be probably more inclined to agree with the fact of like having this idea of removing a cash bail with a misdemeanor possibly. But again, I think that it puts people in a position of where you have to look at the prior. Well, I would even say I'd probably concede that I think that having a misdemeanor would probably be fine, because the fact is that it's not probably a serious offense. Even if you were charged with like a DUI typically is a felony, I think, or it might be a misdemeanor in some cases actually.
Can I help you out, Doghouse, for a second?
Yeah,
I want
it's
to
a
try
misdemeanor
to,
actually.
because I'm noticing that like everything has kind of become a back and forth, and everyone's going back and forth
It's
directly to
okay.
you.
It's
And
okay.
no, I understand, but I want to
Yeah.
try to build a bridge with you here.
Sure.
I think that what everybody here is saying is that the cash bail system that we have working right now isn't necessarily the best system available, and that we need to reduce the amount of it that we're using, and that potentially, maybe, when we're determining the risk that someone has as to whether or not we're going to let them out or we're going to keep them in jail until their court date, if they can put up an amount of cash to guarantee themselves that they're going to be there, maybe we can do that and like let more people out than we would if they put up cash. But other than that, just reduce or get rid of the entire regular cash bail system. And then they can put up as much of a cash bond as they can get a hold of, and this gives them a better guarantee that they're going to stay put. But again, a judge would have to determine this at like sentence or like the initial like accusation period.
Y'all have addressed completely and understandably so some good points that the appearances, right? I think that's fine. I think we've covered that. The other part of the bond that I've said at the very beginning that kind of got glossed over was protecting the community. The protecting the community part, right? So that's the other portion of this, and
you're not
even. But that can be factored in. Hold on. That can be factored in when we're determining whether or not we're going to keep this person in jail until their trial, or whether or not we're going to let them out if they pay us enough money. And sometimes the money isn't going to matter at all because we're worried about
that's what I'm
the
advocating for. What you're saying is what I'm advocating for. Like I don't see the difference in what I'm advocating for versus what you are.
You're advocating for the same thing everyone else is, and maybe the proposition is, hey, maybe we get rid of the cash bail system entirely, but we do offer an option where you can like petition the court with funds to be like, here's money that the court can hold for me until the end of the trial.
You're saying for
I'm finished. Finish your point, and then I want to.
The court can hold for me until the end of the trial, and if I come to the court dates and I do everything, I get my money back because I guaranteed that I'd come. If you were worried about it. Does that kind of make sense? It sounds like
no. Wait. I have to ask this. Are you saying that I feel out of the goodness of my heart and to show the court how much I care that I'm going to just willingly, voluntarily give up my money to the court saying I'm going to appear? Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is that if you're charged with a crime and the court goes, hey, you're too high risk, like flight or danger to society, we're not going to let you out. We're going to keep you in jail. And you go, okay, well, what if I give you $100,000 to guarantee that I'm going to come out or come back and not like commit any crimes during the week or two until my trial? And then they go, okay, well, we'll hold your $100,000 until the trial.
That's exactly what cash bail is, though. Like, except now you're the one determining it.
How it works? You just defined it.
I think both
I feel like I've got a novel and revolutionary new recommendation that I think builds a bridge between your position and everybody else on this panels. And I hope that you can understand what I'm trying to say. And I think the most aggressive.
So what? Wait.
Okay, but this not making a profit.
But this is the problem. Wait, this is the problem. This is the problem here, though. Okay,
what's the problem?
Okay, so would the judge be allowed to deny that person his, I guess if you want to call it a bribe, but if you want to would the judge be able to deny that payment and be like, no, that's too high? No. Would he be able to have that ability to accept or deny that?
The judge is making determinations as to whether or not we're going to let you out of jail. The whole thing is that you're like setting up an annuity or an insurance policy to the government, and
this is a fancy way around cash bail.
What are you talking about?
Cash bail sucks.
It sounds like what somebody is trying to do is make a system for cash bail that only applies to people that we would, if we got rid of cash bail, that we would hold them in jail until their trial. So that basically, effectively, what you would be doing is only getting rid of cash bail for like lower offenses.
Yeah,
Well,
so then
I'm
for
hoping
capital,
to do it for like everything, but if there are people that are high risk, and we would,
government.
Well,
yeah,
yes,
you're
if
just
there are
all
people
you're
that are
doing is
hold on,
limiting.
people that are high
All,
risk.
it sounds like
see
all
what
you're.
I'm trying
Oh
to
my
say
god!
before you guys
Ah,
have
shut up! Everyone, shut up! Everyone.
You're cutting out, Prime.
Okay, yeah, great. All right, hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So, it sounds like what you're doing, Guy, is reducing the number of crimes that bail is eligible for. Cash bail is eligible for.
Well, no, what I am saying is that even if we institute a full cash bail, there are going to be individuals that we determine are not going to be eligible for release before trial. These people are too high flight risk. These are too high danger. Like if we catch like the modern day frickin' like terrorist leader or something, we're not going to let them out for a little while. We're going to hold them until their trial happens. And I don't mean to be hyperbolic, but there are individuals that we're going to hold no matter what. So no matter how much money they present, I'm sorry, you're not going to get
So
out.
you're going to deny them a constitutional right.
This is a bail. This is a bribe. This is a bribe.
But I mean, we already do this.
No, it's not a bribe.
No, wait,
It's not a
so
bribe because the government. It's not a bribe because the government doesn't get to keep the money. The government has to give the money back after you showed up to court after all the times.
We already do this.
Now.
What you're talking
What
you're talking about is you're saying. What you're talking about is you're saying that like
legal bribe.
Yeah, well, so what you're saying is like, oh yeah, we're determining that if you do this bad thing, that you're not gonna be, we're not gonna actually release you unless you can actually give us some of this money, which is fucking bail. Am I missing something? I feel like I'm looping. I feel like I'm in a psychotic break.
No, wait. Here's a better way.
No. Stop. I want to hear from Goon.
Yeah, no, like my thing is because y'all were trying to accuse me of saying that, you know, what I was saying earlier was a way of like paying for your freedom or whatnot. But, you know, bail is literally like a service. Like, you know, like I don't know, like if that's the right word to be using or whatnot. But, you know, bail is literally a service. So like if you can't afford to pay for that service, like I don't see what the and like I guess that's where we're having like the disagreement at. But I don't see what the problem is, you know, and like the
Goon, Goon, if I kidnap you and I tell you if you give me $5,000, I'll let you go. Do you think that's a service, or do you think that I'm basically trying?
It's a bribe.
That's
a bribe in every
way. That's a whole different scenario, dude. Like
wait,
what we're talking about is what Prime had said earlier.
It is a different scenario. Two
people who are locked up in a cell, and one person has an opportunity to pay $5,000, and the other person doesn't. You know, then that person who pays $5,000 buys that service that he needs from bail to get out of jail and take care of the needs that he needs to take care of. Bail is going to.
What is the service?
Bail is going to.
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
Look. Bail is going to be held liable, and then they're also going to be checking in with the courts, you know, and doing their part, you know, because they are a service, and like the client, like, you know, he does have, you know, like you do have to check in like from time to time. It's not like, you know, you're just like out and about, you know, like you do have to check in with your bail like from time to time. So like I'm not understanding like what's wrong, you know, like what I'm saying, or like what's wrong with the system that we have right now. You know, because
the issue is that there's people in jail right now, and they're only in jail because they can't afford to pay their way out of jail.
Yes,
and he's saying, and Goon is saying that, well, you just can't afford the service. That's what he said multiple times. Like, let's go to debate board.
So, quick question. So, somebody, you know, your approach to this again is it's just imitating cash bail, and further, I think it's a further miscarriage of justice here because you're willing to allow wealthy people who are charged with violent crimes to get out on cash bail. You are inherently and necessarily then harming poorer people. in this respect, because they don't have the means to, to use some other people's words, bribe themselves out of jail. Further, look, guys, we have to accept the fundamental premise here, the fundamental truth, and that is right now, courts and judges, right? They can deny pretrial release on the very same factors that some of you are trying to conjure up and package together to warrant a cash bail. Therefore, that means that cash bail is absolutely not necessary, because the courts can already deny pretrial release based on the factors you're trying to implicate in setting cash bail.
Exactly. I think there's two.
Wait,
There's
wait,
two.
Can I address what he said to me, please?
You can
Can I
wait. Are you
address what he said to me, please? Can I address what he said to me, please?
Yeah, sure.
So, it was a mischaracterization. I'm not saying that we implement cash bail. I'm saying that it's like an annuity. It's like if I come to you and I say, "Hey, can I borrow your car?" and
It
you're
works
like,
exactly the same
and I'm
as
like,
cash
"Hey,
bail,
if I give you $10,000, can I borrow your car?" Then
It
you're
works
going to have a
exactly the same
different
as
opinion.
cash bail, somebody. Come on now.
Yeah. Okay. So debate board. I want to hit on. I want to kind of like. I don't want to hit too much onto somebody's system here. Because the idea is that the judge is going to make the decision based on the amount, which seems like a bribe. Because at the end of the day, guess what happens when you don't show up? I know this is kind of how the cash bail system works right now, which I guess is bribery.
When you don't show up, you're going to get hit with an additional charge, and you're going to get picked up by law enforcement. You're going to get brought back in, and you're going to face
the same thing.
trial.
Okay, so debate board.
As
In regards,
everybody else here, I was trying to build a bridge to the other guy here, and I'm sorry it collapsed.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I understand. So debate board. I want to hit on your idea of the same criteria that is used to deny people bond is also used to create bond. I disagree to an extent. It is true that some factors do play into a denial of bond, but our constitutional right is to be given a bond. The denial of bond has to be weighed in the extreme of extreme circumstances. For example, I'm looking at a website online.
Hold on real quick. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Back up just for a second. We don't have a constitutional right to bond. We have a constitutional protection against an excessive bond. So we're not entitled to a bond. The Constitution says that if the government is going to impose a bond, it cannot be excessive.
That's true. That's true. No, that's fair.
And once you frame it that way, then that argument goes away. There's no entitlement to a bond, right? That now means that you can't argue that, oh, well, the court has to give us one.
Yeah, but there's got to be excessive. But that's fair. No, that's fair. But the thing is too, though, however, is the excessive bail, and I think I was trying to look that up too, is determine what exactly was excessive bail. I think there are, for example, like I mentioned earlier, right? I think we would almost all agree that excessive would probably be in the realm of like if you were charged with like simple possession, and you had no prior criminal history, none of those things, and you were ended up denied bond for simple possession. That is absurd and excessive to the nth degree. Typically, those who are denied bond are those charged with like capital murder, the third strike rule. I'm looking at this website here. The individual charged with felony while on bail for a previous felony.
Right, so think about the factors that you're talking about here. You're talking about seriousness of the offense, right? Commission of a crime while you're already under indictment for an existing commission of crime.
But that was the gray area I was talking about. So there's three. Okay, look, I want to paint this picture for the 15th time. I have a 3-tiered system that I'm looking at right now. You have the the denial of bond, then you have the cash bail bond, and then you have the personal recognizance bond. Those 3 bonds, I know there's more bonds, but those 3 bonds I am okay with because I believe that there are those top tier offenses, just like I do believe with the executions. There's those top tier offenses that I believe that those cases are so severe, and your prior criminal history is so severe that you should not have any bond. But then there are those cases that are a gray area. As I discussed before, if you were charged with something 10 years ago or 10 years ago, and maybe it's the same charge, right? Let's say it's DUI and it was 10 years ago and you got charged again with DUI. I'd be inclined to be like, I don't know. You're kind of a danger before. You did it again. I think you're kind of a danger. I'm going to hold you on a cash bail. If you can post it, great, and you'll get on out.
Well, let me ask you this question.
What happens there, though, is you're essentially accomplishing nothing. You're just saying that if I have enough money, then I can come out. You're not actually solving the danger issue or the returning to jail issue. Because if I'm rich, it doesn't matter if what bond you give me. I'm going to pay, and I can be as dangerous as I want.
But if you're poor, that money means everything in the world. If you're poor, that money means everything in the world.
Well, sure.
But I know we can. I know we're just gonna circle. I know we're gonna circle.
One moment. It's almost like we shouldn't. Like the only reason why someone is in jail is because they couldn't afford their bail. Like that's bad, right?
Wait.
That's a bad thing, correct? Like we shouldn't.
Wait.
Like Doghouse, you like literally just landed on it. Yeah. Because they're poor.
No.
You just did it. You just did it. No. Hold on. Displaced Gamer like laid it out for you. Laid it out perfectly, right?
Okay,
and then you say, yeah, because sometimes poor people can't pay, and that's the problem. And that's the problem.
No. Listen. If you listen very carefully to what I was saying, I said you have a rich person. That money means jack shit to them. Okay, but you have someone. Now listen very carefully to figure out what I am saying here. Okay, I believe that bond is an incentive program, as well as also keeping dangerous criminals from off the streets or as much as possible. So when you have someone who is poor, the weight of that dollar is absolutely an incentive to make sure that you reappear in court. I know we're going to circle back to the whole appearance and non-appearance thing.
No, we're not circling back to that. We're circling back to the part that the rich people versus the poor people. You have admitted that to a rich person, it doesn't mean anything to them. But for a poor person, it does. So you're putting in another barrier for a person simply because they are poor. That's it. That's it. No. Doesn't matter what reason. It doesn't matter what reason you're about to say, because in the end, the reason why they're in jail is because they're poor, because they couldn't pay. You just said. What you just said.
They're in jail is because
they're poor. It's because they're poor. The other person who committed the same crime is not in jail because they're not poor. Like, I don't know how many times I have to say this. Holy shit.
Real quick, just to bridge the gap between you two, right? Just to bridge the gap between you two. The reason why they're in jail in the first place is because they committed a crime, but the reason why they're still in jail
No. They've been charged.
They're in jail.
Sorry, not committed a crime. They've been charged with a crime. Sorry, my fault.
Right. That's right. So, Doghouse, I get that you keep appealing to the incentive, but that's on the back side.
There's
the front end of this. The front end of this is that we are innocent until proven guilty, and that denial of pre-trial release, right, infringes upon that foundational principle. Okay, and if there is a legitimate risk to public safety, that is a compelling interest that we ought to deny pre-trial release. However, what you're saying here is that we ought to be able to infringe on a poor person's freedom and liberty simply because they cannot afford a pretrial cash bail.
Well, no, I would say
that is exactly what you're saying.
Okay,
is you can keep them in jail because they can't pay because a dollar is important.
That's not, no.
But a wealthy, violent
person
can be released because they can pay.
No.
You wouldn't be able to.
You're not listening. Okay, let me explain something.
What they're saying is there's an incentive.
You're not listening to yourself.
No one is listening at all. Okay,
this is what you've been advocating for this entire night.
I'm trying to explain.
You don't even seem to realize it.
The Space Gamer, your mic is peaking seriously. It's peaking. You gotta maybe turn down your gain. But we can understand you. It's just that like your mic is peaking just so much.
Is this better?
Yeah, that's better. Okay,
can I restate?
Go ahead.
Restate your claim, dog, real quick, just to make sure that I'm clear about what you're saying here. You have two premises, okay? The first premise is that the bond helps incentivize people from coming back to show up to court. The second premise is that it deters further crime from happening from that individual. And the conclusion is that's why the bond should be enabled. But
it should be considered.
Right. what I'm seeing is both premises are false, because the incentive to come back to court is not the bond, it's the warrant, and then the deterrent for the crime doesn't even happen. As long as you can pay the bill, then you can commit as many crimes as you want. Apparently, it only stops certain people who can't pay the bill. See how both premises are false?
What I am saying here, because I understand that everyone in this room is attacking me. I get it. I'll flash the victim card, but I'll play it.
I haven't attacked you. That's unfair.
I got you. I know. That's fair. So, if y'all could see me, I'm smiling, by the way. I'm joking with this, all right? But what I am saying here is that you are not being held in jail simply for the fact that you are poor. Rather, there is an avenue out of that facility that you are in via the way of a bail. Now, if you were denied bail, then you are being held in jail until your trial. So now there's also the right to a speedy trial and that etc. stuff. But generally speaking, though, again, if we want to talk about we're talking about the system, and we're not talking about the nuance.
No, I'm sorry. I'm done. I'm reaching the end of my rope with this conversation, right? Because, all right, yes, the judge doesn't put the person in jail, right? Because, hey, you're a poor person, and so you will spend your time here in jail while you're waiting your trial, right? Yes, you're correct, dog. That's not the exact reason. However, effectively, if you put a price on your release that you cannot pay because you're poor, that's the reason why you're in jail. Again, not because you were poor, right? Yeah, it's true. Not because the judge says, hey, all poor people, hey, you guys gotta chill out, and my rich buddies, you guys can fuck off. No, but effectively, the system says that because, like, I'm gonna put a price tag on it, you, right? And you're saying, well, this is your way of escaping. Yes, but I'm too fucking poor to pay, and so the jail will be full of poor people, not rich people. It's just like I
get it. So
I'm just done with this.
Question real quick. Can I ask Dog a question real quick? Do you think the reason why people don't show up to court, like, do you think that these reasons are like important as like to understand as to like what we do with these people? Like in terms of when they're being held before their trial?
Are you asking the reason why they don't show up should be considered?
I'm asking if you think that it's important. So like we're talking about like how do we make people show up to trial? That's essentially the question here, right? Like what is the best way to do it, right? Probably a good way to like understand how we do that is to look at why people don't show up, right? There's I linked in that study I linked. The most common reasons why people don't come to court are like work conflicts, transportation, childcare, and just straight up forgetting about the court dates.
Well, forgetting about the court date is probably. I mean, I would probably say the childcare and other ones. I think forgetting about the court date is a little bit.
I mean, I don't think that that's like as reasonable as like. You get what I'm saying, like, right?
Yeah, I got what you're saying, yeah.
So I think if you take these into account, right, and you're looking at, okay, well, why don't people show up, right? I don't know if adding that money barrier is necessarily like a deterrent for people to not go to court. In terms of like lower tier offenses, it seems like that's not the issue, like, or that doesn't seem to be the case.
My issue with what Prime has said is that I don't believe it's the sheer fact that you are poor. Rather,
I just said that. No, I just said that. Don't repeat that. Please don't repeat that. I really just said that. Prime.
I'm not. I know what you just said. You're saying that they're in there because of the crime and everything.
Then it's not a problem. Then that's not a problem with what I said.
No.
Because that's what.
My problem is that you're saying that the person. You said the person was arrested, thus they're in there for the crime. What I am saying is that the second part, which is the bail, they are now being denied or given a bail based on certain criteria. So the reason they are in jail, you could probably say, is probably due to bail, but that bail is also a consequence of their prior actions and their certain.
And so then keep them in jail if you need. Okay, I'm done. I don't care. Like, I'm done with this conversation. Like, I am like, we have been circling this conversation for like 3 hours. Like, and we're really not making any progress. We're at the exact same part where we started. Holy shit!
Can I restate this for you, Prime?
No, I don't want to restate. No, don't restate it for me because I've heard it. I've heard it literally 20 fucking times already. Please do not restate that for me. Holy shit! Fuck me.
Prime, so can I just ask you like a kind of question that just piggybacking off the conversation instead of like trying to like nail down like and try to convince other people, because I just don't think that we're going to get anywhere with
Absolutely not. We won't.
yeah. So like if the data showed that that bond that bail for higher level offenses caused people to come back to court more, would you be more like in favor of like our bail system?
I have to look at the study for sure.
Well, no, I'm just asking. This is like a hypothetical question. I'm just asking, like, if it showed.
Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me or talking to the dog?
I'm talking to you, Prime.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. So if the studies, could you repeat it then? I apologize.
Yeah, sure. If there was, if we could see the data, and the data showed that for higher level offenses, a bond system does make people come to court more often. Do you think that that's like? Do you think that would be something that we should keep in place?
Okay, I think that's a good question. If the data said that, and it caused people to come to court more often,
wait, do you mean like bond in general or like cash bond?
Sure, we'll talk about cash bond.
Okay, sure. So I guess you're trying to nail down what my priorities are. My priorities aren't necessarily that people show up, right? I want them to show up, right? But that's secondary. My primary concern is that people are not being held simply are not being held effectively because they are poor. That's my only concern, right? I don't think it's those when I'm throwing around those studies for everyone else, right? The reason why I'm throwing out those studies is because that's what everyone else's concern is. The concern is that like are people going to show up? Are they going to maybe just fuck off? Like it'll be anarchy if we don't have these this barrier in place, this economic barrier. But personally,
such a chaotic place up here.
Exactly. And so, but my purpose, my purpose is simply for equity in the system, right? And that rich people or people across the economic spectrum have the same experience with the justice system. So yeah.
Well, we already have a system for people who don't show up. And we have a warrant system. If you don't show up to jail, you're subpoenaed, and you get a warrant placed on you, which forces, if you come in contact with police, they're gonna take you back into court at some point, right? So the system to get you back into court is already there. We're just adding another layer that prevents only a small division of people from not showing up.
Well,
incentives, but yeah, it's another incentive.
If that incentive did cause people to come to court more often, I think that you can make a pretty decent case for it. But if you're talking about specifically equity, I'll ask again, Prime. I'm asking you again, Prime. Do you think that income-based bail would be something that you would be in favor of, so that people who for the same crime, two people in completely different situations, one person who makes like $250,000 a year versus one person who makes like $30,000 a year, do you think like adjusting their bail based on their income is like something that you would be in favor of, or do you think that like you just straight up think that we should get rid of it completely?
Straight up get rid of it. Because you can say, well, I'm going to charge this person who makes more money, but the person who makes more money will still be more likely to be able to get out otherwise, right? And there's going to be a barrier unless we're talking about like charging a billionaire $1 billion. At some point, there's going to be a barrier in which people in the 1% will always be able to pay no matter what, right? If we're unless like you just raise it to some unbelievable level that we haven't seen before. And
The idea
even
would be,
and even then, right? If the point is that we think this person is dangerous, well, then simply keep them in jail. If they're not, then let them go.
yeah, no, I agree. I guess the point would be that like you would be setting bail to something that they could pay like almost every single time, right? That unless it's like
then what's the point of you having it in the first place? It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
So Prime, you're just like saying like for each circumstance, like it would just be situational.
As it is now, it's situational now. But I'm saying get rid of the money.
Yeah, the only thing that we need is people who are gonna cause further harm to society to stay in jail, and the rest of the people can go free. And we have a system. If they don't choose to come back, then we place a warrant on them. They're not dangerous anyways. So they don't. It's not like we're by releasing them and not putting them on bail that they're going to cause further harm to society. They're just causing further harm to their own well-being in the future. And we just keep the people who are actually dangerous to society.
But you're assuming guilt there. You're assuming guilt.
Well, no. If you are charged with a certain level of crime, then assumption a further crime is going to be warranted.
This is why it's important to talk when we talk about this shit, to talk about actual like examples. And this is the problem with the justice system, and I've said it again, I'll say it again 1,000 times over, is that when we talk about this, we end up going from one extreme to another extreme, and then we try to navigate all this, and we never really hit on the point, which is why it ends up talking like we're talking in circles, because we don't really have an example to run off of. When we talk about like the bail system, which I know
I started with an example. I started literally with an example. I put the example in the Twitch chat. We've started with an example. Yes, we talked about an example.
Even that, I think I also like earlier talked about like the most common reasons why people are being held in jail, right, for these low level offenses. And I think that pretty much everybody agreed that for these low level offenses, like letting them go with releasing people without bond, and then just like making sure that they can get that they do appear for the court date. I think that they're in the same study they're talking about they saw a failure to appear decrease by 32% just by sending by having by redesigning their notices and by sending text messages and reminders and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think those are fine. I want to make this clear to wrap it up, or at least wrap my part up. I'm all for some kind of reform if I find that it's reasonable in my view. I think there's definitely some reform. Actually, I absolutely believe there's a reform that needs to be had in the criminal justice system in various areas. I look at, for example, the disparities of when we look at the plea deals. I think that's one of the big things that I've always had. The innocent people who are executed, I find that atrocious. And so those are a few of the areas, but I definitely have my qualms with the criminal justice system. I also have my qualms with the DAs who try to become celebrities, however you want to take that quote. But that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, go ahead.
I think that your opinion is also going to change on this topic, like if you depending on if you think that like prison should be reformative or if prison should be punishment, right?
Oh, absolutely.
If you're somebody who thinks that prison should be punishment, then like who gives a fuck? Like, yeah, you got arrested for this, like you must have done it. Here's like a bail or whatever. But I think that like most people probably who are joining here, like we genuinely like we're looking for the best outcomes and we're not looking for like
yeah.
What's gonna be
and that might be why that maybe that's why, because maybe I do have a bit of kind of a half and half approach. I do believe there is definitely cases where it should be a punishment, and there are cases where it should be reformative. So I think that is playing into a factor. Maybe I don't think somebody should be necessarily given a higher bail per se as punishment per se, but I guess it kind of is way of that actually by having those criteria.
Yeah, we do kind of go. I mean, effectively, it is punishment by.
Yeah, 12 day. Yeah, it is kind of a punishment. So yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So maybe that's
you get it repaid back to you. It's just a simple loan.
So I'm just about to close out over here myself, but I don't know. Like all I was saying was, and just let me finish. Don't get like triggered or anything. But like I was just saying that like I personally don't have any problem with their current bail system that we do have, like to do away with it, like I think that wouldn't help out at all. Like especially just a situation that Prime just that he just keeps on stating or whatnot. But like I just feel, that the bail system that we have right now, it is a service that we have, and if we were to do away with it, it would be taking away people's jobs and whatnot. And like I know that does sound kind of messed up, but either way, if you do bail out, you're still going to have to return back to court. And if you don't pay your bill, then you're still going to have to wait in jail. And, you'll see the judge also. Both, you can see it as buying your freedom. Yeah. I mean, but it's a service. It's a, like I'm sure it was something that somebody came up with and, made it a business. That's why you have multiple businesses doing it right now, working with the court systems or whatnot. So you would be taking away people's jobs and, people's incomes. And, it's just a service to help people out and like a hard time that
hold on, real quick. If we were to eliminate,
that's all I'm saying.
If we were to eliminate all debt,
I mean, it might be predatory, but there's a lot of things that are predatory in this world. Like are you going to get cheap shoes who don't spend a lot of money on their shoes and like their shoes fall apart like in a week, and versus somebody who goes out and spends like a little bit more money on like a good pair of shoes? Are you gonna get mad at that company saying that they're fighting against equality and like all this other mess? Like nah, it depends on the amount of money that you spend to get the good amount of service that you qualify for. And
so if you pay more money, if you pay more money for your cash bail, does that mean you get better service?
No, because they already have set amounts. They already have set amounts that you would.
You believe in
to be set depending on the crime, that's what your bond is usually set at. If you can pay that, then you can pay.
We should have concierge service. If you pay bonus, so we should have concierge service, right? Like you should be escorted by a limo to all your court gates.
People's jobs. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's fine. That's okay. That's okay. I don't care.
You don't care about harming somebody else, harming somebody's familyhood.
Oh my God. Dude, I'm sorry. Everyone shut up. Oh my God. No. You're like, I'm going to have to assume you're just like a little too high for this conversation because you're not part of this shit at all.
I'm dead serious, bro. I'm dead serious, bro.
No, I'm sure you're dead serious. You're dead serious high. But because you cannot follow any of these arguments. Like, period. This is unbelievable. I just don't know. Like, I can't.
Hey, Prime. I have the best question.
What are you talking about?
I have a better question. I promise. So, Goon, like, if you were to eliminate all debt in the United States, do you think that would be a good thing? If we did, not even like through like policy, like we write it off or anything like that. Like if all debt in the United States was like
no,
you don't think that would be a good thing? All debt for everybody. Like
no, why? No. Why?
I think that's a terrible question to try to let.
Well, so my
why would you do that? And how does that even relate to the conversation that we're having?
Because there was a follow-up question, right? So if you get to the point where you've eliminated all debt in the United States or something like that, right? Effectively, what you're doing is you're putting debt collectors out of a job, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that that if nobody had any debt, that it would be bad.
Fuck debt collectors. Fucking scum.
Yeah, no, I think Goon here isn't considering the flip side of this, which is Goon. What you're over prioritizing here is the livelihood of bond bailsmen, right? Over the presumed innocence of people who have been detained and charged with a crime. I don't think, Goon, you really want to argue that we ought to keep the bail bondsmen employed so that we can continue to detain.
They're still going to have to go to court and face the judge anyway. Both people are going to the same.
I got the best question.
What's the problem, dude? I literally.
I'm sorry. Debate boy, if you want to have the comment, dog house. Wait a second, debate boy. If you want to do this, I'm engaged because I literally don't care anymore. But debate boy, if you want to give it a try, I'll let you.
Brain rot.
No, I don't think there's any cutting through here. Goon, you're really seriously under prioritizing the rights
the service that we've been having,
of people who have been charged.
It's been working. Like I don't
No, it's
see
actually
what's
not
wrong with
working.
it.
It's not working
Okay,
because we
okay.
know that people
Okay.
who've not been able to afford their bail and remain in jail pre-trial, okay, afterwards tend to commit more crimes. They're more likely to commit additional crimes. Further, we are directly harming them and their families because now they're no longer employed. And because they're in jail, they lose their jobs, right? So we have this cascading effect, right? This wave after wave of harmful effect by imposing cash bail, particularly on the poor. And what you're suggesting here is that we ought to keep a bail bondsman employed, right? Despite the fact that there are these truly directly harmful effects on poor people. And I don't think you're really getting or grasping
all y'all
that
beat
point.
on my question.
I think
Y'all
that
got
you're
rookie
like
questions.
really trying to like reach
Hey,
and like you're
Goon.
really trying to make the worst
Y'all
kind
got
of circumstance that you can.
Y'all got rookie
just to,
questions.
like,
It's my turn.
Try to prove your
Goon.
point. Like,
Goon,
what?
do you believe in the death penalty?
Yeah, why not?
I don't know. I just wanted to throw that in
Alright,
there.
Goon,
I was trying
Goon.
to move the goalpost a bit from this conversation.
Goon,
So I was like, death
if-
penalty. Fuck it.
Goon,
Death penalty? Yes, no?
Yes, like why not? Yes. Yeah.
All right,
like, why
let's
not?
keep.
I mean,
I'll try to bring
what?
it back on the topic here. So, Goon,
Why
if Bell's bondsmans did not exist, that job didn't exist at all, would your position change on this? We never had a history of Bell's bondsmen. It's never been thought of. Never came into existence. Would your position on this topic change? Or is it solely on the fact that there's Bell bondsmen?
It's because it's because we already have a system that's been working, and what y'all are talking about nothing has clicked to
But
me
if
that
Bell's
sounds
bondsmen
reasonable
never
that would
existed,
work.
would your
So,
position still be the same?
no, obviously not, because I wouldn't even know about the system or how it would work, or like I wouldn't be able to.
So you don't
to
care about
have,
the
like,
actual
observed
argument.
it.
You only care about the Bell bondsman. Is essentially what you're saying.
Holy shit, Prime. I just
The
realized looking at
system
your title
the
how far
system
we've gotten off
itself
from that
is
original
good.
topic.
I don't understand like what you're trying to say, dude. Like the system, I'm saying as
just
a
trying to
Bell's person
illustrate the
is good
actual
because
agree,
if you
Prime.
can
We spent too much
pay
time.
to get out of jail, then like I don't like. What are you saying? Like,
Yeah, I know. You don't know what we're saying. That's fine. We're just gonna have to move on. We're moving. We're just done.
it sounds like you're trying to argue that
Done.
like if
No,
somebody can't afford it or
no,
whatnot.
nope. I don't care. I cannot. like no one here can force me to give a shit about this anymore. I can guarantee you that I'm far past it. Like holy shit. Any which way. Like wow. Nope. I don't care. Stop
Brian,
it.
Can we talk about police brutality?
Yes, let's talk about people getting ass beat. Thank you. Anything, but like this. Holy shit.
Should you be able to bribe your way out of police brutality?
Oh shit!
Got enough money.
I actually believe. Okay, wait, real quick.
You gotta start a business around it though, so that
there's actually
Goon can support it.
a fun fact to just like fun fact to like tie it up in a pretty bow. You actually can usually before you get to the jail, they actually have a cash bail schedule. So before you even see a judge, you can just pay that before you even see a judge, and typically get out of jail. It's like a schedule or something like that. But anyways, sorry, police brutality. Where were we at?
I was just gonna say, yeah, if we wanted to stick to the like title, like, do we think that we're too soft on crime, right? Like, is that is that something that anybody believes? Does anybody believe we're too soft on it? Do we believe we're too hard on it?
Oh man, that's a great question. I
Yeah,
meant to come
Prime,
on
that
here
is a
about
great
that.
question. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Prime.
Prime, that is a great question. So like, I think when it comes to being soft on crime, it is. I'm gonna pull like the philosophy bro here. It's like such a subjective measure. Like, depends on what measure you use, right? Like, it depends on the area. And the thing is too is that when we look at like the legal stuff, we have to look at this the state by state basis. That's where you would start. And if you obviously went somewhere, and this is pure like just out of the blue air, but like if you look at somewhere like California versus Texas, I think it's quite obvious, you know, where Texas would say California's too soft on crime, California would say Texas is too hard on crime. You know what I'm saying? So like it depends on the area you're in. and what answer you're going to get and by what measure. California would probably say Texas kills too many people, so thus Texas is too hard on crime. You'd have Texas saying, "Oh well, you've got all these people just ransacking stores in California and being let out. They're Antifa and everything else, so they're soft on crime." I mean,
so my argument would be that like if we're gonna talk about like are we too soft on crime or too hard on crime, I think we have to talk about the United States as a whole, just because like I think everybody here is probably from different places unless we all manage to live in the same state somehow. And B, like I think if we're gonna be talking about like actually like making changes to like the criminal justice system as like a whole, you're probably gonna have to do this federally. Like I don't think that a lot
wait,
of
no. I disagree heavily. I disagree with this.
You think that you can affect the entire justice system or the entire I guess the entire justice system?
Yeah, absolutely. So the justice system that you're looking at is already built on a district level, like and at the county level even. So like when you're looking at like for example like a rural area versus a urban area, I think there's two totally different situations with two totally different issues. And if you're gonna a federal change, a broad sweeping change is not gonna be effective to the rural area as much as it may be the urban area. So I
doesn't it depend
think
on
that
the
has to be.
change?
Sure, it depends on the change, but again, that change may be effective for say one side of the United States and not be effective for the other side. It may be more effective for cities than it would be say the rural. I think it's better at the county level like it is right now. You want to affect change, you hire in the judge that you believe.
Even federally, you wouldn't be able to do it because of the Constitution. We have the states have
federalism, right?
Yeah, well, the states have rights in which they're able to control certain aspects of like their statehood, right? So you wouldn't be able to make enough federal changes that would have lasting and huge impacts on the lower levels of the justice system.
Do we
it
not
just
have?
Wouldn't be possible.
Did we not have like federal mandates on how prisons have to run?
Well,
no,
that's because they're federally
maybe.
Ran though.
Well, hold on, wait. No. Okay, hold on, wait. This is super great. I'm glad we're talking about this. So, states. So, to break down how jails work, we have jails at the county level or in city level to some degree, then or the precinct level, I guess. Then you have when you've been convicted of the actual felony, not a misdemeanor, typically a felony. You're going to go to a state prison or a state jail. It's usually the same here, which is ran by the state. If you are convicted of a federal crime, then you will go to a federal penitentiary. At that point, it is managed by the Federal Bureau of Prisons. But what will happen is you do have federal regulations to a certain degree that I believe states have to abide by, like certain laws and stuff like that. But it's very, very broad. It's not very specific. The states usually handle how their prisons are ran, typically, even including up to the budgets, because that's how they get funded. The state facilities get funded by the state. So when you hear about like COs, for example, and how they get typically underpaid, if you ask a CO, most of the time they say we're underpaid and overworked. They're underpaid because the state controls that budget. So there is some federal oversight, but it's very limited.
Okay, it's possible.
No, I'm not a lawyer, Sink.
I don't think any of this really gets to whether or not we're too hard or too soft on crime. I think when we're talking about whether we're too hard or soft on crime, we actually have to talk about again how we're dealing with pretrial detention, how we're dealing with sentencing, how we're dealing with probationary requirements. For example, what we saw the Senate last year, right, with this the Equal Act, right, where we would retroactively reduce prison sentences for crack cocaine traffickers, and force prosecutors to treat crack and powder cocaine trafficking equally. Right now, this is a specific instance where you could argue: Are we becoming too soft on crime, or are we?
But that's at the federal level, not the state. That's the federal level, though, not the state. So keep that in mind too. That's only affecting really the federal level.
I don't know how that affects anything. That's still a point on whether or not talking about a specific instance, whether or not we're being too soft or we're being too hard. And I would argue that in this particular case, we're being way too soft.
So like when I think about like are we being too hard or too soft on crime, I'm really most like outcome oriented, right? So like what are like if we're being too soft, like is it the case that we're being too soft on crime and that we're having more people return to prison, or is it the case that we're being too hard on crime and we have like however many people like the highest population prison percentage out of any other country in the world, right?
Okay, So what you just said is actually super important. I'm glad, and you're gonna love my answer because it's what I've been repeating for like a million times. In order to assess whether we've been too soft or too hard, and the way that you were describing it, yes, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, where you can see this pattern, right? And we can look at prison sentences, or for example, we can look at a statistic where how many people are incarcerated in the United States versus other countries. That's a great statistic, right? And we could be like, oh, well, we have more people, so thus we're this. But that doesn't show the full picture. I love my nuance. You can call me nuance, bro. Haha, joke. Anyways, so you can I love trying to dive into that because again, I think the most fair, I'm not asking when you look at this and determine this, you have to look at each person, each case, the best way is look at the state level, see how the states are handling it, what are their crimes, what are, and then compare that to other states, and then see kind of like an average and see, okay, well, on average we have this kind of thing going on. I don't know, something along those lines. But generally I would say that we are fairly, and no surprise, reasonable on our crime. I think that each state handles it the way that their citizens feel that it should be handled. And I commend those who are with the, what's that one justice system where they try to free innocent people from jail or something? Innocence Project. I'm absolutely cool with Innocence Project. I actually just watched Just Mercy. Great movie about a black man in Alabama who was on death row. And was innocent, and it was basically like a racist town and stuff. Yes, I know, surprise conservative believing that there was a racist town in Alabama. Absolutely, okay. So yeah, I think that it was a great movie, and I think that I definitely think that we have to look on this case by case basis before we provide like a causal effect. But definitely, I would say we're probably about average or reasonable on crime.
I would agree that the outcome is the most important part. I would think that the outcome would be based off of if it's like an internal harm or an external harm. So if you're just affecting yourself, and we have sentences that have these exponentially bad outcomes for things that are just really internal to you, it only affects you, like drug possession and stuff like that. We could probably lessen the sentencing rates on that, but things that are external, in which it like DUIs or murder or stuff like that, things that affect people outside of you, I think that we could probably be a little bit harder just to prevent us from harming society as a whole. But I think that the crimes that only affect you as a person, we could probably lessen that, soften that part,
So do you think that jail should be more? I had already asked you, Doug.
Yeah.
But like, do you think that prison should be more punishment based or more like rehabilitation based?
It should be a mix of both, and I would say it depends on the person. No surprise again, but like, because for some people, I believe that there is a reasonable, like, if let's say you're a career criminal, right? You've been in prison for the past 20 years, right? I think at that point you're kind of too far gone, depending on the crime that you committed. Obviously, there's limitations. So, like, if you just got convicted of possession and you've had like 15 felonies prior, obviously you're still going to only have limits within that possession of a controlled substance. But if you murder somebody and you've had 15 prior felony convictions, yeah, throw away the key and use it as a punishment. That person's probably beyond reform at that point.
So if I propose an extreme hypothetical, okay?
Sure,
So let's say that we have the ability to check and see if somebody is going to commit a crime in the future, right? We have like some technology like a brain scan or something like that, right?
Sure.
Let's say somebody kills 150 people, right? And then we do a brain scan and it goes, oh, this person's not actually going to commit a crime ever again, right? Are you okay with like this person roaming the street, or do you think that we need to like punish this person and we need to put them in jail?
They've killed 150,000. How many people?
150 people. The number of people.
I mean, I don't think the number really matters past 2 or 3. Even 1 really is a lot. Okay, let's be real.
The question he's trying to ask you is, do you think people should be rehabilitated, or do you think it should be just pure punishment? That's essentially what he's asking.
It's a situational basis. I think that some
what
people
about
can
that
be rehabilitated.
Illustration that he gave you.
Well, no, but it's not an either or.
Problem.
It's not an either or, though.
Well,
I think that you guys are
right?
making it mutually exclusive. So punishment has to come before rehabilitation.
No,
Otherwise,
he says that you already know that he's never going to commit this crime again. We know that as a fact, so you can't really be rehabilitating him.
I mean, it's a silly hypothetical, but if we know beyond a fact that he's not going to be rehabilitated, then yeah, keep him in prison and throw away the key. If it's like a factual basis,
it's just a punishment outcome.
Oh yeah, so you think that it's more important to punish these people than the fact that they're actually going to go out into society and cause harm again?
Yes, there is retribution.
Wait, I mean, like if he's in prison and if you know for a fact that he's going to rehabilitate, meaning that someone is going to die, and he's in a, I mean, well, so you could even I could even go. You want me to take this to the nth degree? Okay, I could say that if you know that he's going to kill somebody again, then he's probably likely to kill somebody in prison, which means this would justify him being put in solitary confinement.
Sorry, when I say you know that. Let me just be clear. So I said that you know that it's not that they are not going to commit any crime again. Like they won't even fucking speak.
Oh, that they're not going to commit any crime ever again. If that's like okay, this is going to sound kind of crazy, but if it's like if we're talking about like a super extreme example, like you said, where it's like a 100% factual basis, sure, that's the rehabilitative side. Sure, I guess you could say at that point he's been rehabilitated, but that's obviously not the real world. We don't have a brain scanner to determine whether or not someone's been rehabilitated or not.
Well, so I get my entire point is that like if you genuinely do believe that like rehabilitation and making sure that like keeping people off the streets for not because they did something right, but because like they are a danger to society, right? If you genuinely think that somebody's a danger to society and that's why we have them in prison, then like that makes sense, right? Like I think that somebody like a mass murderer is probably going to be like a danger to society for most of, if not the rest of their life, right? So keeping them in prison makes sense. But if you have somebody who's like who has been rehabilitated, right? Then like it doesn't really make sense to keep these people in prison. So if like in the if we find ways to like be like damn near not 100%, like because I don't know if it's possible to be 100% unless we find some crazy like brain scan thing in the future, right? Like should we not be working towards making sure
the problem with this is that it's not pragmatic, and I'll tell you why. Because what we're having here is, if we're talking about, say, somebody who's committed first-degree murder, which is basically you intended to kill the person, summed up, you're going to have a hard time public policy-wise trying to get that particular crime with the, we do have some, first-degree murder does have life with parole, so I take that back, but there is or is it life? Yeah, it's life with parole and life without parole, but usually you have to serve life and then you get parole. So if you're assuming to get parole earlier than life, then you're going to have a hard hill to climb on the public policy, because now you're kind of lowering that bar to other crimes, like say second-degree murder or third-degree murder. So you have a long way to go to kind of convince public policy. You're better off to start with the lower crimes, work your way up to the higher crimes. Things like simple possession, for example, is one that I think right now has a lot of backing on public policy, that you could probably obviously get. You could see it probably at federal level, probably within the next 5 to 10 years, where like marijuana gets legalized. Okay, but getting like parole, like taking away the life without parole at first-degree murder, is going to be extremely difficult. And I wouldn't necessarily agree that here's the other problem you run into as well, is that if you have first-degree murder with and you take away the life without parole option with first-degree murder, and someone has killed 3 or 4 people, that's 3 or 4 charges of first-degree murder. Depending on where you're at, it can just combine, but some judges, depending on the state, they may be able to like run them, I think it's consecutively or consecutively, where they go on top of each other, which is technically like life without parole. So you could have that.
Well, so I agree with what you're saying, but so the whole point is that like the bar for people who commit like lower crimes that we'll see, like so like if we're talking about drug possession or even drug sale, right? Like these people can probably be rehabilitated a lot easier than somebody who like kills people,
sure,
right?
Yeah,
like I think we could all agree. I don't think that that's like a controversial statement, right? So I think like focusing on rehabilitation to make sure that people so like me personally, I don't think that like nonviolent whatever you want to call it, like nonviolent felonies. I think people who commit nonviolent felonies are generally like, it's going to be a lot easier to rehabilitate them than somebody who like assaults somebody, like a felony assault or something like that. And like focusing on rehabilitation of these people first is obviously going to be a good first step to.
Guys, but we're already doing this. I mean, multiple states have programs like Hawaii with Hope Court, right? Where Hope Court, exists to, let's see here. you get drug offenders out of prison, right? You're constantly drug testing offenders. You're advising them that positive tests results in immediate incarceration. All right. So, and then you also have, Texas, for example, back in the early 2010s, they reduced their incarceration rates by 8%. And they didn't do this by the kind of du jour approach today, which is just releasing violent criminals out on the street because of some at-risk bullshit like asthma, as they did during COVID here over the last 2 years. But instead, right, release them under community supervision, place them or imposed intermediate or lower level sanctions on them, and remanded them to treatment facilities. So we're already doing this across the country.
We are, but it's not
debate board. Okay, so here's the fun part about this too. I'm about to really.
What do you mean
get people?
Is not working? Are we seeing an increase in these types
of
crimes?
40% of nonviolent offenders. I mean, I can link the study that I have here, but like 40% of nonviolent offenders reoffend.
So okay, so there's a whole slew of issues with that, because the barriers that once you have a felony, even if it's a nonviolent offense, you now have a felon. Depending on it, if it's a felony, you have a huge barrier in the way of that. The other thing is that you're probably going to have the association of being in poverty, and there are a whole bunch of other cascading issues outside of that fact. But a fun little tidbit of fact: what Debate Board said about drug treatment programs. Well, those drug treatment programs actually can take place inside of a prison. And fun fact, get this kind of going. Some of them take place in private prisons. Private prisons are not what most people think in terms of like permanent housing facilities where that people stay there through their entire prison sentence. That's not entirely true. Most of the time, the private prisons are used as pre-release programs. So before they go out into the free world, is what they call it in prison, they will go to these pre-release programs in these private facilities. So that's another little, just kind of little fun.
Do you know if those programs are more effective than like
effective
rehab?
or not? I don't know. I really don't know, and that's me being 100% honest with you. I don't know if they're 100, but no more effective. If you hear people, they're probably going to say, well, it's a private run facility, so you would think that maybe they're.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about like specifically like drug rehabilitation programs inside of prisons. Do you know if these are like any more? I personally don't.
I don't know, and I could
rehab facilities.
The problem with this is I have seen, because I'll leave it at this, that I have knowledge from how these things have worked, that you can throw 1,000 programs into a prison, but it's not the program that determines the change, it's the individual. I've had individuals who simple like rules that can't be followed. So again, the number of programs that you throw at it and people that you forcibly put into these programs doesn't mean that they're necessary. Now, I'm not saying just because some inmates don't, some people break the rules and some people don't follow the program means that we should throw away the program. I'm not saying that. In fact, I don't even really know if it's effective or not. But I think that there's a whole bunch of other pressures that go on inside of incarceration besides just programs that they take. They're not in a cell, generally speaking, 24/7. Depending on the security level.
I would argue like a really important part of rehabilitation to get people more, so like you're not like trying to make these people like not violent. You just want to give them a better alternative, right? So like if you're somebody who has like committed some kind of crime, right? And you need to be you've been in prison for X amount of time, like the chances are like there's a good chance that you're going to go back to prison. Right?
Yeah.
How do you make it so that's not the case? Well, you help these people set up a life that they enjoy or that makes them happy or fulfills them in some way, so that they don't do that. So part of this is like making education programs more widely available, making it so that people can set up
training programs.
Job training programs is another really good one. Also, another thing that isn't necessarily a part of prison reform, but I think would help with this issue is like making it so that it's easier to get a job as a felon as well, or as a prior felon.
Yeah. So we have, at least here in Texas, we have 2 of the programs you've already mentioned, educational programs, and we do have job training programs. It's could be controversial to some people maybe because they basically repair state buses and county buses, and they have like carpentry programs for other state or county facilities and things like that, state facilities. So there's a lot of job training programs in prisons here, at least here in Texas. As far as the felony thing, yeah, I agree with you. That was another one of my reforms that I wanted changed, and I've been very adamant about that. I think one of the biggest barriers when you get out is that little label that you have, unfortunately. Even though it may be your first felony, and maybe it's a nonviolent felony because you're a felon, that's a big weight to carry. And I think that there should be some kind of system for you to, if you haven't committed a crime within, I'm just arbitrary, but 10, 15 years, right? I mean, a decent amount of time, then you should probably likely have that felony either removed from public record, expunged, or removed from public record to some degree
By
where
that time,
people.
it's already, the damage is already done. You've already.
Well,
not been able
that's
to get a
fair
job.
too. Just like I said, 10 to 20 years was an arbitrary number. I mean, it could be 5 to 10 years. Again, it would probably depend on the crime, right? I mean, if we're talking about like simple possession, I would probably agree with you. If you can like show that maybe you're on a probationary period for 10 years, but we'll expunge it in 5, and if you break it within the 5 to 10 year period or whatever that it's been expunged, it could be put back on your public record or something. I don't know. I don't know how that would work. But I would agree that there needs to be some kind of avenue to get rid of that felony in due time.
Well,
as proportionate, yeah.
Or you could just
Okay.
so you don't have to report it.
Okay. So I think we have gotten it. I am going to send you guys off somewhere else. Please come back. Well, I'll be back tomorrow. We'll be doing gaming on the YouTube channel, so follow us there. In case you haven't done so already, exclamation social and chat for our social media. Follow us on this channel. Follow us on this channel. If you'd like to see more of this, hit the follow button. Make sure notifications are on so I'm going live. Hit up the Twitter to know when I'm doing stuff. Discord for the Heart and Souls community, be a part of the Discord, and then YouTube. Again, subscribe there. It'll be a great help. We'd love to have you there as well.